Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I want to welcome everyone to the July, there you go, I already got that right. To the June, what day is today? I forgot. 19th meeting of the City Commission. It also happens to be Juneteenth Day, which recognizes it's a federal holiday that was created back in 2021. But on June 19th, 1865, 2 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Yeah, I'm really having a good time here. Emancipation Proclamation, word had finally reached Texas to notify the enslaved people of that state of their freedom. This is a holiday honoring this delayed freedom. It was also recognized, like I said, it was recognized in 2021. It is not solely a day of celebration. It also inspires a reflection on all of us for all the work that's left to do to ensure the fullness of Black Americans' liberty. I would also say that goes for other ethnic groups such as Filipinos, our friends from the south of the border, and other groups. So we all need to be working toward freedoms for everybody in this nation. Also, I had on your desk that on Saturday I had a special honor to present a tribute to Mrs. Elena Jane Winslow Lynn. I didn't know that we had a real daughter of the American Revolution that's buried in in Oakwood Cemetery. A real daughter is an individual whose father actually served in the Revolutionary War. And so we have that individual. I was there. I didn't even know there was the Sons of the American Revolution, but that's how far I don't realize that. But the local chapter honored her with a special plaque and to engrave there. Brandon, who's our sexton, did a great job in setting everything up. My thanks to the Daughters of the American Revolution, the local chapter, in making this honor real. And I know it was just a special moment that I got to participate in. With that, as we begin our meeting, we'd like to do so by acknowledging that land on which we gathered is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for your strength, resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. So with that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Mr. Wilson, would you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I really do hate them 12th grade words. Anyway, roll call, please.
Yes, and good evening, Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Here.
Commissioner Colbert.
Here.
And Mayor Lewis.
Here. Announcements from the interim city manager.
Well, you stole my thunder, Mayor. I only wanted to make sure that we recognize
got it.
Juneteenth
Okay.
today.
Okay.
So,
Well, we have. Thank
yes.
you. Okay. Is that all?
Yes.
Announcements from the city clerk.
Yes, the meetings to announce for this week, the week of June 19th, the Arts Commission will meet on Wednesday, June 21st at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room. The Housing Commission is meeting this Friday, June 23rd. That'll be 9 a.m. in the commission chambers, which is both of those meetings are, of course, on the second floor of the governmental center. I've shared before that nominating packets for the seats of mayor and city commissioner are available for pickup in the clerk's office, and those are due in our office, the city clerk's office, by July 25th at 4 p.m. I wanted to also share that we've got a new face in the city clerk's office. We've got a summer intern from Michigan State University's James Madison School, Tom Dolinka. So he's focusing on urban planning and public policy. So stop by and say hello, and we're really happy to have him with us. He came highly recommended by Paige Paul, who's a government teacher at Traverse City Central.
James Madison produces excellent students, if I say so.
Yes.
That's where I graduated.
A shameless plug in there.
Exactly.
For the rest of my announcements, Sarah, if you can join me up at the podium. She supposes. Sarah is the perfect example of a quiet leader, someone who's really intelligent, doesn't seek the limelight, is the ultimate team builder. Sarah is the nucleus in the city clerk's office. She serves as deputy city clerk and literally touches every aspect of the functions of our office. And it's an honor for me to be able to share that Sarah was selected by her peers across the entire state of Michigan, by the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks, as the 2023 Deputy Clerk of the Year, and that covers cities, townships, and villages across the state. And Sarah is just, you are an invaluable asset and a wonderful human being, and it was wonderful to see you get recognized in Detroit last Thursday at a dinner. And at that dinner, the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, the Deputy Secretary of State, joined us, and she got a standing ovation. I thought maybe we could give her one today.
Absolutely.
So you can rise and give Sarah Lutz a high five. Okay. All right. Well, Sarah says she doesn't want to say anything because she's that humble, but you deserve it, and I'm glad you got the recognition. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, and next, we have an excellent city staff that, as you know, receives a number of awards. Sarah is one that's being honored tonight. Jerry Swanson, if you can step up here. Jerry is the city's GIS coordinator, and he recently received the GIS for Everyone Award and the Best Cartographic Design Award from Imagine. And that award is really meant to acknowledge folks and support and encourage practices in GIS that, in every sense of the word, make GIS accessible literally in every sense of the word for everyone. Jerry is an asset to the city team. He has a lot of IT expertise and is just someone who always works to find his pathway to yes and looks for possibilities. And so, Jerry, why don't we give you a standing ovation, too? I just want to thank you for your work in the city. Do you want to say anything? No? Come on. All right.
Yeah, this is obviously an award. I'm the GIS department of one, but couldn't be able to do this without the staff. I do want to give a shout out. I think one thing we forget about in GIS is the data in, data out component. So, the city's been building their GIS for over 2 decades, and people like Chrissy Black and people in engineering have really built up all of our data. So being able to share it to the public is the fun part and get that transparency and engagement. So, but honored to receive the award for the city.
Thanks, Jerry. Great. Starting out the meeting with some good news.
All right. With that, we're going to start with the consent calendar, but I am just going to give everyone a heads up as we get further down the calendar. I'm going to be making some changes. The interview portion of this will be the last part of the meeting. We'll probably move a couple of items down, so that portion doesn't have to be a rush, and we can finish all the other business first. So we'll take it from there. Mr. Maritet?
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving minutes of the June 5th, 2023 and June 12th, 2023 meetings of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing a purchase order for the removal of interior coatings of membrane 4 at the wastewater treatment plant. Approval recommended. Item 3, consideration of declaring a 2014 WL32 Wacker mini loader surplus and authorizing a purchase order for its replacement, which is a 2023 Wacker Newson WL28 mini loader with 4-way bucket for use by the Parks and Recreation Division, which is a scheduled purchase. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the cemetery module for BSNA management software and consideration of authorizing the annual maintenance fees for 2 years after the first year. Approval recommended. Item 4, Item 5, consideration of authorizing a one-year purchase order with the option for staff to issue subsequent one-year purchase orders for up to 4 additional years, for a total of 5 years for utility bill printing and mailing services. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing a purchase order for in-vessel composting equipment, which is required by the previously received grant from the United States Department of Agriculture with the cost to be reimbursed by the grant. Approval recommended. Item 7, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for painting of parking areas, crosswalks, and legends. Approval recommended. And finally, item 8, consideration of authorizing an agreement for professional engineering services for preparing a source water intake protection plan and to prepare a grant application to the Michigan Department of Energy, Great Lakes, and Environment for it to potentially cover up to 50% of the cost of preparing the plan. Approval recommended.
Okay. Does anybody have an item they'd like to have removed from the consent calendar? Yes, sir.
Item 7 and 8.
Thank you very much. 7, 8, I was going to have 8 removed myself.
I was going to have 7.
Okay, good.
Question about 7, so that's good.
All right. Okay. Okay, we've had these items removed from the consent calendar. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to have an item removed from the consent calendar? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Support.
Okay. We have a motion to support. Okay, is there anyone from the audience that'd like to have any comment on any of these, on this? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. First item that was removed was item number 7, which is consideration authorizing a purchase order for painting of parking areas, crosswalks, and legends. Either one of you two?
I'll start.
Okay.
I've pulled it years past. I will vote against it. I appreciate the memo that's in there that points out that Streets Department and Mr. Duturi, they're just going through with what's in the book. They're painting what's in the book. But this is our one opportunity per year to have a say. It's the only opportunity where it's actually in front of us. And as I've stated in past years, I'm just looking for a continuous improvement, not a total overhaul, just what's in there that's better this year than last year. And that might be as simple as how we're using less paint, because the paint is very likely contributing to micro and nanoplastics in our bay and in our soil. So just looking for continuous improvement. Thanks.
Okay.
Were you going to pull this one?
Yes. And I guess, support the general idea of paint on our streets to guide pedestrians and vehicles and bikes and other road users in their proper lane, literally. But I do question the timing of this, considering that in many of our crosswalks or lane markings are degraded to the point of invisibility at this point, and we are seeing higher traffic volumes. So is there a specific reason why this is so late in the calendar year that it comes before us?
And if I can call, since we're going to have somebody get up, mine was a piggyback on that, because I wasn't going to pull it, but I was going to ask, because this has come up in previous years, with the limited number of people who do this in the state. One year, I think we didn't get it done till like around now or later, like right before Cherry Festival, like literally like opening day, it was finishing up. And so I also was kind of curious what the timeline looks like for this year. And I see Frank getting up, so.
I think one thing that comes out of it is that we needed to go out for bids. So that would have been a little bit of delayed, but it could have been started, those bids could have been started perhaps sooner. So, Frank?
Frank Duturi, Director of Public Services. To answer the question about the timing, we're bound by temperature. So there have to be degree days over 50 degrees for a certain amount of hours in a day for the painters to operate. That really is why our paint contractors don't come north until late in the year. If you look at the Farmer's Almanac for this year, for the gardeners in the audience, I think our last killing frost is typically June 3. That doesn't leave a whole lot of opportunity between those cold nights and operating temperatures for painting. So that's why a lot of the painters, and we do have a limited amount of painters that do paint throughout Michigan. They typically start their work earlier in the south. Up north, they We're somewhat at their beck and call because they're working earlier in other places where they can.
I understand those limitations, and I'm sure there's plenty of cities and municipalities downstate that need their crosswalks repainted as well. But is there a reason procedurally that this couldn't have gone out for bid in April or whatever, and we can approve it, but then they can work at as soon as is convenient for the contractor?
The timing could have been done earlier. I agree with that.
Thank you.
Is there an opportunity for a multi-year agreement?
Sorry?
Is there opportunity for a multi-year agreement? And then that way they already know they have it?
In the past, we have included options for amended year agreements.
Well,
Honestly, we're having a difficult enough time with finding paint contractors to do it. Last year, 2 in the state. That's one with one bidder. This year, 3 in the state is what we're seeing. So I think it's a function of supply and demand, and there's a lot of folks that are looking for those paint contractors. So I don't know if that really doesn't address the
I have a
yearly
question about
piece.
that.
Well, let me ask a question. In the memo from the staff report, it mentioned a recommendation this would be for a 1-year contract, but would also include an option of renewal for 2 additional years in 1-year increments. But I don't see that in our original motion. Is that still open for consideration?
I don't have the
It
RFP in front
is.
of me.
It is open for consideration. It will have to come back to the city commission to authorize those subsequent years, so
Well,
it's.
but I mean, this way we don't have to go out for bids again.
Right, we won't have to.
Okay,
If the
so,
commission accepts the same contractor in years 2 and maybe 3.
Yes, we have the motion down here in the memo, so we can read that with
yeah,
the
I
2
saw
year.
that in the memo, but that's not the motion that's
Right,
in front of us.
But we can read that motion. My question, though, I had really quick, and I don't mind still doing this because it ultimately does come back to the city commission. But we seem to have this fluctuation. I think it was like a year or 2 ago where there were only 2 companies, but essentially we were told only one was going to be willing to come up here because they were already booked out. So we would even really have a choice. We're paying $150,000 a year for this. I guess I'd be curious, and I don't need the answer right now. I'd love to see it in the future, an email or follow-up or something. At what point does it, I know this is probably not done by us in-house anymore because at some point it was a cost-cutting measure, but at what point is this not a cost-cutting measure anymore and that we would benefit from having staff who knew how to do some of this stuff and invested in some equipment? Maybe maybe that money doesn't work out, but I'd be curious if we've looked at that recently and what those numbers would look like if we did it ourselves.
Sure, that's something we can certainly look into. The amount of time spent and the equipment, I'll reply with an email and provide some information.
Thanks, Frank, I appreciate it.
Well, we have a motion with the understanding that this motion does include 2 1-year options to be determined, if the pricing remains within a reasonable amount, mostly the same, as well as satisfactory work. So it's understood. So I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, and I'll try my best here with what's here. I'll make the motion that the city commission approves.
No.
I'm trying to read the second one, but it doesn't make sense to read it as it is.
Let's put that the city manager be authorized to issue a purchase order to Advance Payment Markings LLC in the amount of not to exceed of $148,954.47 for painting and striping of crosswalks, parking areas, and legends throughout the city, with funds available in respect to streets, park, and auto administration funds, and furthermore,
For a period of 1 year.
that this is for a 1-year contract with an option of renewal for 2 additional years in 1-year agreements that the price remains the same and the service remains satisfactory as determined by the city. That covers your entire motion. If
I
someone
guess I'll
wants to
make it. I was letting somebody else if they wanted to. I'll make it.
Someone want to make that motion?
I just said I'll make it.
Oh, you made it. Okay. Who wants to second it?
I'll
Okay.
support that.
Okay, support that, okay. All those in favor, Okay, any other comments? Anyone from the audience like to talk about this, please?
So for those speaking tonight, the rules for public comment for any agenda item are to please state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or a city business owner. We've got a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, a timer will beep, and we ask that all language be respectful to everyone. Thank you.
So Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B. I'm a Traverse City resident. So on a line painting, South Madison Street up to front right over there, there is a sign that's on the shoulder that says, you know, there's a left only, and then there's a through and right turn only. Those lines have not been painted whatsoever for the last several years. And my question is, if there's no line painting right there, how come there's still a sign right there? Thank you.
Denny Scordato, 422 East State Street. I'm just curious, when the RFPs go out, do they just go out with a generic request for a generic quality of paint? Or is there a chance that at some time in the future, we will get our streets striped and marked with a higher quality paint like other communities seem to use, that doesn't disappear in a few months and then just remains invisible over the fall and winter and spring? I keep hoping.
Okay. I know on the second question that has been looked at, the price goes up significantly on the paint, so, but that's something I know if people want to look at that, that's something that Art can bring back to us in the next year.
Frank.
Frank, okay.
They're
Boy,
both
I'm
right
having a
there.
tough day. So, okay, there you go. All right. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
And Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. The next item that was pulled is, was item number 8, was the consideration of authorizing an agreement for professional engineering services regarding source water intake protection plan. Tim, you had this item moved?
Yeah, I just, like at first read, sounds great. But as I read it word for word, to me it reads like we're spending money for the opportunity to potentially spend more money so we can get a report that we'll likely just put on a shelf. So I don't really see the point.
Okay. Okay. My question is that this scope of project, this grant that we have to put in for has to be put in less than 2 weeks. And we're just now awarding this tonight. We will take some time to get a contract put together. How can this be done in less than 2 weeks? I'm just looking, the scope of the project includes applying for an EAGLE grant by 6/30/2023. Unless that's the wrong date.
No, that's the correct date.
I don't see how you can get this done, sir.
Wizardry.
Krieger, Director of Municipal Utilities. It's the grant application, and then the report is 1 year from now will be due. So we put in for the grant. It is, you know, a form that you fill out, and there are questions in there and answers that we have to provide, information and so forth. But it's not the full report. The full report will be taking place after the award to the engineering firm, and we'll have till June 1 of 2024 to finish.
So we're getting ready to pay $29,000 to fill out a grant application?
Nope, that includes both tasks, if you will. First, step 1 is to apply for the grant, and then continue on and do the actual.
If we get the grant.
I'm planning to move forward with this motion, if it passes, to do this whether we get the grant or not. It's a very important piece to our drinking water source.
Okay.
And if I can say something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you may.
So one of the reasons that this consultant is being recommended is because of their familiarity with our system. So that helps speed up the process of the grant application. They don't have to go digging around for information.
So, but if we were to not do them and take the low bidders of Fleece and Vanderbrink and not worry about the grant, we could save $12,000, right?
We could. But we're not familiar with that firm as much. They haven't worked with our water treatment plant or our water system. I think there would be a lot of time needed for them to bring themselves up to speed. And I don't know if we can make the grant deadline with the low bidder.
Well, makes my question mark is, why did we go out for an RFP anyway then? Okay, any other
Art, I'm just
questions?
wondering if you could, for the public, explain why this is so important for the quality of our water.
Sure. This looks at, similar to like a well head protection plan where wells are drawing water from under the ground and the groundwater moves differently than you might think. Ours is a surface water intake protection, so we can see it. It's East Bay, and we want to take steps and implement a team effort for all those communities that front East Bay that would have a potential to contribute runoff to the bay, and it would actually go reach out to them and help zoning rules and regulations in other communities surrounding the bay to make them more aware of, you know, their runoff is the drinking water source for a large population in Traverse City and these townships around us. It extends likely past Elk Rapids area to the north and Peninsula Township, of course. So it's an optional plan that Eagle offers this grant to help secure for communities and drinking water systems. But it looks out at the bigger picture of what's coming into the bay, what potential threats, contaminations are there. We're aware of the airport plume coming toward East Bay, and it also helps us with the CEDA, or the drinking water SRF point system. So next year we would have the chance to have more points to be awarded projects that'll possibly get funded. So it's been on my bucket list for quite a while, and I'm finally getting to it. So I'm excited to present it tonight, but you have great questions.
Thanks.
Okay. With that, anybody else up here have any questions? Okay. I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
I move
I'll-
that, go for it.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I'll make the motion, but I can't read the PREIN.
Brian?
And
Brian and
Brian
Newhoff.
Newhoff, go
Brian and
for it.
Newhoff.
Okay.
The city commission approves to enter into a consultant agreement with Prain and Newhoff for the purposes of providing professional engineering services to complete an Eagle grant and a source water intake protection plan for the not to exceed amount of $29,000 with funds available in the water fund.
Support.
I think that was the memo one, so just to add, is there
I
anything we
think
need to add just to make that?
Just that the contract is subject to approval as to substance by the city, or interim city manager and the city attorney.
Yeah.
Formed by the city attorney.
Can I amend my motion?
I
to
heard him say that.
include-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Because this other one down here is just one sentence.
Yeah, I know.
like
It's,
that better.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
But there you go, now
It's
it's
always
kosher.
the motions on the first page of the packet, or usually first page.
Okay.
It's city manager
Anyway.
motions you want.
It's the same motion.
Though it says 5 affirmative
Okay.
rather than affirmative.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. Who made the second, or is there a second?
I did.
You did. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anyone from the audience that has any thoughts they would like to share? Okay. Okay, I'll bring it back. Any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Nay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
And Mayor Lewis?
No.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
Under old business, we have a public hearing for an assessment roll for Special Improvement District 2022 002B, which is an alley north of East Front Street. Tonight is the public hearing. Due to an error on our part, we will be opening the public hearing, but we will be, let me see.
Adjourning it
uh,
until
the
July
adjourning the
17th.
public hearing after we've allowed folks to speak until the July 17th meeting, or
Yes.
July, this is the 17th meeting. So so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. We don't have to take any action. So with that, I'll open the public hearing for anyone that wants to speak.
And I'll state the rules for the public hearing. I just want to be completely clear that the only action the City Commission is going to take in connection with this matter tonight is to adjourn the public hearing until July 17th. So this special improvement district will not be approved this evening. It's up for potential approval on July 17th. And with that, the mayor has opened the public hearing. And I just want to share that because the City Commission is acting as a board of review, this public hearing is on an assessment role for a special improvement district. It also acts, the City Commission does, as a board of review for those who are receiving a proposed benefit and a proposed special assessment. So it's important for folks who want to preserve their right to further appeal to record their attendance this evening. They have that same right on July 17th. So anyone who's not here tonight can come and even just state their name and address to preserve their right to further appeal, even if they don't wish to speak. But those who do, if you're part of this special improvement district and you'd like to address the commission, please come forward and state your name and address. And then I will, after that, ask those who are in attendance who aren't speaking to rise and give their name and address for the record. So for now, just those wishing to speak, please come to the podium.
Good evening. Steve Stannard, 1016 Peninsula Drive. I'm a city resident and a business owner. I'm going to reserve comment tonight until the next scheduled date, and with that, I'll let that rest.
That's fine.
Anyone else wish to address the commission this evening?
Okay.
Okay, all right. Great. Anyone that wants to address the commission that's here tonight? Okay, with that, I'll ask, with the exception of Mr. Stannard, we have your attendance recorded already. Anyone else who's here who doesn't want to speak but lives within the proposed special improvement district, please rise and I'll ask you to state your name and address. And we'll start with you, ma'am. And would you spell your last name, please? Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, with that, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to close the public hearing?
Adjourn.
No, I'm adjourning.
Or adjourn? Well, that's the
Okay,
motion we'll have you
okay.
do.
Here's this, the following motion is what we need to adopt, that the public hearing regarding the proposed special improvement district for the paving of the alley north of East Front Street between Peninsula Drive and North Garfield Avenue be adjourned until Monday, July 17th, 2023 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
We got a motion?
Support.
And we got support. Anyone else from the audience would like to make comment? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. The next item is consideration of an intergovernmental agreement with Traverse City Light and Power to provide that will hold the city harmless for any financial risk with the issuance of $13.5 million in bonds. Who's going to provide the overview on this?
Certainly, I can do that.
Okay.
So this is another step in the process that goes with bond issuance. We had published a notice of intent to issue bonds. That had a 45-day waiting period to allow people to initiate a referendum if they so chose. That has not occurred, so now we're at a point where we can move forward with this bond obligation.
Okay. I know we've been through this when we did the resolution of intent. I think we've all expected this. So I guess I'll open up for well, first of all, let's get a motion on to see if to move forward with this, and then we'll open up for any other public comment. See here.
I'll make the motion that the mayor and city clerk execute an intergovernmental agreement with Traverse City Light and Power where it pledges to hold the city harmless of any financial risk in connection with the city's issuance of up to $13.5 million
time's
in
up.
limited tax generation obligation bonds for electric utility system, smart grid network, and fiber system improvements, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager, interim city manager, and its form by the city attorney. And further, that the resolution authorizing 2023 capital improvement bonds, limited tax general obligation, which would authorize the issuance of up to $13.5 million in limited tax general obligation bonds for electric utility system, smart grid network, fiber system improvements be adopted.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Okay. Mr. Buckhalter.
Rick Buckhalter, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I'm all against this because, as Bill Tweetmeyer stated, which is true, that Light and Power has no idea how many residents are going to buy into this, and the ability to pay the bond over a 30-year period is based on, I believe, a minimum 40% buy-in resident-wide. And they have made no attempt that I could find to even gauge how many residents, through a flyer, a questionnaire, or anything, intended or were likely to buy in. And I just don't understand that. They send out mailers every month. They could have put a questionnaire in there. They could have put something on their website. They did nothing. Yet they're proceeding with this second bond for the same project, totaling something like $28 million over 30 years. And if they cannot make the payment, this is a clincher, the payments, there's going to be an increase of, I believe it was 4.2% to their users. That might be too bad for residents. And I talked to the interim city manager, and I said, would you please talk to Light and Power and find out who their 10 largest industrial and commercial users are, and ask them if they can bear the weight of a 4% increase in their sales prices, because it would drive their prices and the cost of doing business up. They're related. And I see nothing in this packet. I see nothing from the interim city manager. I see nothing from the Light and Power director that they even addressed the question. But Mayor Lewis, I believe you were here when Clark Engineering was here at one point 20 years ago asking for something so they could get more equipment to have more employees. And they stated even a 1% increase in the cost of power would gravely harm our ability to do business. So that's what I told the interim city manager, and it bothers me that nobody even addressed the question. The reason there wasn't a referendum done, there wasn't enough publicity about it, and it takes a week or two just to get forces together to get out and get the number of signatures required, which was 800 and 1,000. But this is a bad way to do business. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Okay. All right, we have a motion. And we have support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, next is number 3. We have under old business number 3, consideration of adopting 2 resolutions approving ballot proposals, one to eliminate the cap on the maximum amount of allocation from Brown Bridge Trust Fund, and the other one is to, where's the second one? To use part of the principal of the $12 million for the purchase, for the acquisition of property adjacent to the Brown Bridge quiet area. I know we've talked about this before. These are the resolutions that we need to put on the ballot, or the proposals on the ballot. As stated in the memo, both of these will have to pass. If one passes and one fails, then both of them have failed. So it's an extra step that will have to be undertaken. But I know that we have requested it to move forward. So this is where we are today. So it'll be up to the public of how we would like to proceed with this. So I'll be glad to entertain a motion to go ahead and put this on the, if you would like, to place this on the November 7th ballot.
I'll make the motion that the resolution to amend Section 129 of the City Charter of Traverse City, which directs the city clerk to establish the related ballot proposal at the November 7th, 2023 city general election, and establishes the language to be added to the city charter if the proposal is approved by the city's electorate, be adopted, and further, that the resolution approving ballot language authorizing funds from the principal of the Brown Bridge Trust Fund, which directs the city clerk to establish the related ballot proposal at the November 7th, 2023 city general election, and establishes the language to be added to the city charter if the proposal is approved by the city's electorate, be adopted.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments toward this?
Rick Buckholder, 932 College Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. When they first presented this in this room, the room was filled pretty much to capacity with people almost exclusively from East Bay Township, up in the Spider Lake area, generally. Now, East Bay Township has money, but there wasn't one word said about even sending them a letter asking their township board if they would consider partnering in the cost of this. Not even an attempt, not even a thought. So I don't know anything about this property. We've got between now and November to explain to the public why it would be a good deal. The only thing I heard at the previous meeting was that it would provide a good buffer between the Brown Bridge property and the Rotary property, but not that there's something of significant natural interest as being a reason to buy this one. So a lot of this doesn't make any sense, but the thing that bothers me the most, as I said, why isn't East Bay Township being asked to partner in the cost? It just doesn't make any sense to at least question them, since our wild guess, 80 to 90% of the people who use it live within a mile of it, and we live, what, 7, 8 miles away? So, and then the other thing that bothers me is you're uncapping it, not just for this one purchase, which is the way it should be stated, but you're going to leave it uncapped, which bothers me. Anyway, thank you.
Steve Largent, Grand Traverse Conservation District, 1450 Cass Road. Brown Bridge was purchased in the early 1900s by the city in anticipation of providing power to a growing city. And it was at that time that Brown Bridge was then, dam was then constructed and put online in 1922. From 1922 through about 2004, Brown Bridge provided hydroelectric or power to a growing city. And so very little was put back into that property. In the 70s, as we know, gas and oil was explored for and found underneath Brown Bridge. It has provided millions of dollars to the city and offset a lot of city taxes and assisted with a lot of projects. The investment in this property, 228 acres of what's known as the Spring Lake property, 80% of the lake frontage is included in this, and then also 300 acres from Rotary. This is an investment to the future management of the property. There is critical habitat there around that Spring Lake, and also it will provide a connection of trails through the Rotary Scout Camp property, including the Boardman River Trail, and that's a TART trail. So it will provide a lot of benefits to the management. If that area is developed, those properties are developed, it'll put extraordinary pressure on the management of Brown Bridge. And so this is an investment back into a property that has given the city a great deal of benefit.
Okay. Anybody else like to make comments? Okay. Back to the commission. All those in favor of the motions, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
No.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes. Okay, here's where we're going to skip a little bit before we go to old business 4. We're going to take up new business G1, which is consideration authorizing the interim city manager to send a letter in support of Tart Trails RAP 2 grant application seeking $500,000, and also to consider authorizing the allocation of $421,449 of the city's general fund balance as a match source. The total project is estimated at this time to be $1,242,000. Who's going to, okay, you guys are going to do that. There they are, ready to roll.
Yep.
Okay, I'll let you kind of start the
Good evening,
discussion.
Sean Winter, City Planning Director. I'm joined today with Julie Clark of Tart Trails and Gene Drenzy of the DDA, project partners on the Tart Trail Improvement and Extension Project. Today, we're here to specifically talk about the first phase of implementation, as well as to seek your support for an MEDC RAP grant. So as you're aware, this project, the scope, goes from Division Street to Murtry Bridge, where the emphasis is on improving the existing trail conditions. Then from Murtry Bridge down East Front Street, up Peninsula Drive to Eastern Ave, where the focus is extending the trail where we currently have none today. So phase 1 specifically is going to go from Murtry Bridge through the Senior Center. So with your support, we kicked off this project in January of 2023. We had our first round of public engagement in February with 1 virtual and 2 in-person meetings. We went through the conceptual plan that we had at the time with the public, as well as some design considerations that we wanted feedback on. We went and tweaked those conceptual plans and took what we heard from the public and went back to them in March for further input. Then we started getting really busy into the design work. As we started working through this, due to the transformational element of the Peninsula Drive portion that we heard from the public, we decided that it was pertinent to go back to that section and revisit it with the public, which we did in May, just last month. During this time, we also had numerous one-on-one conversations with various property owners, and Tart led a walk down the Peninsula corridor to hear from the neighbors along that stretch. We also held a number of focus groups to kick this off in February to hear their design considerations and concerns. This included the Grand Traverse BAM, the Michigan Department of Transportation, the Watershed Center, Delamar, and Northwestern Michigan College. We also met with various city departments to better understand maintenance needs and things like that a new trail system would require. So there's a number of reasons why we landed on this first section as our phase 1 implementation. One of the main reasons is we would like to align this with MDOT's 2024 reconstruction of this section of East Front Street to minimize our impact and disruption along that corridor. We also heard very loud and clear from the public that they felt very uncomfortable and unsafe with the existing conditions where you have a sidewalk very close to a high-volume travel lane, and that they were much stronger in supporting a multi-use trail that had further separation, foregoing that sidewalk in exchange for street trees planted along there as a traffic calming element. We've also been engaged in some positive conversations with MDOT that if we can move forward with that design, that there is the potential for them to allocate some of the funding that they would have used on that sidewalk up against the curb towards this trail funding, so we will keep you posted on that. There was also a lot of enthusiasm from the public with making those connections from Delamar, Sunset Park, the Haggerty Center, and the new Senior Center to the broader regional trail network, as well as the downtown core business district and vice versa. Plus, a lot of groundwork had already been laid through extensive conversations with Delamar and NMC that go back nearly 2 years ago when we first kicked off the conceptual planning of this trail. So with that, the funding, Tart Trails would be the applicant of an MEDC revitalization and placemaking grant. This is the second round of funding through this program and the final round of funding from the state through this program. The deadline is going to be June 30th of this month. So we're requesting a 40% grant contribution. To be more competitive, you can ask up to 50%, but we know there are other projects in the region that are applying for the same pot of money, so we're trying to position ourselves more competitively. And this is also an opportunity to leverage fund balance to where we could get 66% outside funding towards this project through the city's contribution, as well as financial collaboration through the project partners. So for the breakdown, again, we're asking the RAP grant for $500,000 or 40% project contribution. The city's contribution would be $421,500 at 34%. The DDA at $200,000, 16%. TART Trails at $121,500 at 10%. So that brings the total budget the mayor mentioned to $1,242,898. Now that cost does include a 20% contingency, which I would not recommend going below given today's environment of material prices and labor and the uncertainty with bids. And it also includes a 5% construction administration fee for the project. With that, I will hand it back over to the mayor.
Okay, you have the overview. I've sent an email to I'm in favor of moving for this grant, but I'm got a concern that we're using general fund balance to use $421. As we know that when we received the audit back in January, there was a fund balance of $7,202,700, or 38 or almost 39% fund balance. This is fairly healthy. Taking the math and dividing out, that means that, and following our policy, which is policy number CC056, whereas we like to keep a fund balance of anywhere between 15 to 20%. Anything over the 20% should be used to go for future capital projects, or that is recommended by staff and approved by the city commission. I have no problem with moving forward with this as long as this $400 and some odd thousand can be documented coming out of the $4,335,000, which is part of the 20%, and that the remainder amount of $2,868,600, whatever and change, stays committed somehow or another until this commission or this body makes a determination with staff what we want to see that money used for. If we don't get it earmarked soon, at least by the end of this month, all bets are off, because now the fiscal year is ended, audits take over, and then you got to wait until the new fund balances are figured out. I'm recommending, and I have a motion that I'm prepared to make if no one wants, is to lock up the $2,900,000 that we can't as designated for future deliberation. That's hopefully how it would show up in the audit, and then if there's enough money left in the remainder, then so be it. So that's kind of where I'm going. Do you want me to read the motion? Okay.
So I had similar concerns, but separate from the mayor's. And right away when I saw it in the agenda packet, because we are being asked to ignore our policy about fund balance. And in discussions with some members of the public, I shared this well may be the best use of that fund balance, but we have a policy that says we're supposed to come up with a plan on how to use that fund balance. And when we just ignore it and start making motions like, I have a great idea, let's spend it on this. And we're like, oh, yeah, that looks great. And maybe it is. Maybe it's the project of the year and we should spend it on it. But we have a policy for a reason, so we are meant to be a deliberative body and think about what we're doing and not just jump when something comes before us. And again, this could be the thing we should spend money on, but maybe there are other things. I brought up a year ago in part of my opposition to this is we just built as a community a fantastic Boardman Lake Loop Trail, and yet we have issues with equity, in my opinion, because there are long, not forgotten, just never built, never planned, but discussed connections to that loop. Carver is the only stoplight along Woodmere, and so we have all of Traverse Heights that, older kids, able-bodied people can cross at Center and find their way to the trail, but that light makes the most sense. And the city owns the property all the way down to the trail. And TART's been interested for years. So to me, this is in isolation. It's like, oh, here's a project, let's go spend lots of money, 1 point whatever million. But if our goal is to be thoughtful about what we're doing and we're trying to advance certain goals here, and like Nate says, I think this aligns with the city commission's goals, it probably does, but it would be of value to the community to talk about what the other options are. 1.2 million, yeah, maybe 1 million goes to this, but for 200,000, what else could we do? Just the lack of conversation, to me, feels a little irresponsible. Thanks.
No. And I won't deny that when I asked the question back during our budget process, I did mention the senior center, and that's a project that's been on the books for a number of years. And next week, we're going to find out about the numbers, which we've already heard is a little over $10 million. And right now, the best guess that I can remember is we got about 800,000 ready to go. So spend it here, spend it there. And, of course, our interim manager brought up a number of other issues that need to be talked about, such as the facilities study that we haven't gotten into. So that's why I would like to make sure that at least the 20%, that the amount that's above the 20%, which is what it is supposed to be held and talked about, not anything below it. Anything within the 20% is fair game. Everything above it is what's supposed to be held according to the policy and talked about. But I want to make sure it doesn't get used until we have had that discussion. And if the city staff and treasury and all that can, by the time this grant's awarded, probably sometime in September, then if there'll be another year, taxes will come in. They may probably easily find the $400 and some odd thousand they need if we get the grant.
Okay, so I have a question because this has been, a little over 24 hours we've had this, and I admit don't sit on my city email on Sundays usually. And so I'm just clarifying something.
I sent the email and I made sure that no
If
one
I
could
can just-
respond to me at all.
If I can just clarify, though, to Tim's point, so because I just want to make sure I'm following this. For me, I much rather see things on a spreadsheet and I appreciate in a narrative, it just takes my brain a little bit extra time to catch up. So doing the math on our policy, we have a 7 million and change, or 38.7%. 20% would leave us with the 2,000, almost, well, let's say it, 2,868,000 and change. So we'll be meeting our fund balance, or our reserve fund. We're not taking from the reserve fund that we need to be in. That is our remainder that we're playing with here.
I don't want to play with that.
I shouldn't say play with, that's what we have left to use, because that's
That
beyond
we
what we
need.
are required to have, or our own policy has us required to have in our reserve fund. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now we have that money, and that's that's what we're dealing with all of this list of things that we're looking at, is just the 2,868,000 and change. Okay.
Well, I have a
That's what
bit-
I just wanted to clarify, though.
Well, but I think our interim manager has talked about the whole amount of the 7 million, but right now.
That's not what I'm asking about. What I'm asking about is that
Correct.
number. We set that aside, everything else is up to where it's supposed to be by our own policy. That's what
Correct.
remains.
What
Now,
you
what
said
we're
is
going to do
correct.
with that is
What
what our.
you said is correct.
Has it?
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just jump in? Because one of the questions, and it was in the document that we all received from the interim city manager in response to questions about the budget. One of
Yeah.
the questions I had in there was that two of the narratives in two separate memos in our budget packet had different numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never heard, like, he was supposed to work with staff, come up with a response, like how to rectify that. Does either assistant city manager or city clerk know, has that been rectified? Like, can you confirm that 2 point whatever million dollar figure is? People have slapped hands, yep, we agree, that's right.
I believe that, I thought he sent out an email about that, that correction a while ago.
I looked earlier
don't
today and
know-
I
don't
I
know
couldn't
the
find
number. Okay.
Like I said, I don't have any corrections.
So it's likely to be correct.
Yeah, I
95%.
think that's fair,
Yes.
fair to say.
if you did.
Well, I'm going to read the motion.
Well, I
that-
think Mitch had his hand up.
Yeah.
here.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, Mitch.
Not that this isn't a good project and this isn't a good opportunity to pursue grants with MEDC, but it does get me thinking about the fundamental purpose of things like capital improvement plan that specifically outline projects that we can have, including visionary projects that don't have funding sources identified for them. And if say, hey, we have a project that's on that list and an opportunity for a grant comes up, then that is essentially pretty clear. Yes, it would still have to come to us, but we can identify, hey, we pointed out this project some time ago as something that's good, and here we're moving forward with it as an opportunity. A good example is the rebuilding of Cedar Street a couple years back. That, yes, we identified that that was the only block of Traverse City that flooded regularly, and the Watershed Center, not the city, pursued grants with FEMA and other agencies and managed to secure most of the funding. The city still had to chip in, but that was something that we had identified as an engineering and road shortcoming of the city. This, while it's a good project, doesn't quite meet those same criteria. So maybe we should have been a little more
Well-
visionary in identifying potential opportunities.
Well, in a bit of defense because of another avenue that I'm in, this RAP grant came along pretty quick.
Yes.
Very quick in May, and you can see the turnaround time is very quick also.
Yes, it is.
2 months to put things together, get public buy-in, public, and resolutions of support, yada, yada, yada. I'm not blaming them for that. I wish we'd known that this was the main project we were going after back in early May, maybe, or maybe we heard it and just whatever.
And
I-
then, yeah,
I'm not-
you have 2 months, and it takes 10 days to get something at a meeting here, so.
Well, there you are. So,
Excuse me,
what
Mayor.
I'm saying is that I think
Oh,
we
Sean is
could
up.
go ahead and move with it, but with the motion, I'm trying to hold back the 2.8 million for our further consideration. If they can come up with it out of the 4.9 million or 4.3 million that's still left out there as surplus, more power to them.
I just want to provide a point of clarification that this project has been in the CIP as a visionary for this year and the year before that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I have a question for Julie. Is there any chance that we could be signing on for this and then needing more money for you? Or is there a chance that less?
Oh, I've been up here for 13 years, so I never say this is the last time you'll see me.
Yeah.
But I do make the commitment that this is a group project. This is not a city-only project. You've had partners with you the whole way, and I think the loop is demonstrative of the work we do. So I would be seeking other sources first.
Thank you.
Hey, what is the direction of this body?
Could you clarify the alternative?
Well, I'll be glad to
Motion.
read it to you. I gave you a copy of the email that, and there was a discussion with Nate as he's on vacation, which I didn't, but I'm not trying to come up with uses before the end of the fiscal year. That's impossible. The motion I have suggested that reads as follows, that the City Commission authorize the interim city manager to send a letter of support of Tart Trails RAP 2 grant application seeking $500,000 in funding from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation RAP 2 program for extension of the Tart Bayfront Trail east from Murchie Bridge through the Senior Center, and the City Commission directs staff to identify $2,868,640 of the June 30th, 2022 fund balance as designated for future deliberation between staff and City Commission prior to the end of the current fiscal year of June 30th, 2023, and the City Commission authorizes the allocation of $421,449 from the fund balance of the general fund, provided such fund balance is within the 20% as either in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022 or June 30th, 2023, contingent upon successfully being awarded the above-mentioned grant, and finally, that the mayor and city clerk execute any necessary documents in connection with this approval and such documents subject to approval as deformed by the interim city manager or city manager, however long that takes, and substitute by the city attorney.
I just had a quick procedural question about this, because as you mentioned, this has just come through the pipe so fast, and especially this, the change and everything. As someone who has had to come to an emergency meeting the next week after a motion was made without there were some errors legally. Is we all vetted that, this was all vetted in the office, and we're all good to go on this?
I have
Yeah.
no idea who's vetted what.
I think, what I think the answer is yes. I understand the motion being that staff would have to essentially earmark that 2.86 million as subject to future deliberation by the commission. That'll happen before the end of the fiscal year, this fiscal year, so before June 30th. But
It won't happen.
the allocation, I
Well-
think.
Oh, yeah,
would.
the allocation.
But the
the whole-
discussion with the commission will happen after that, of
Yeah.
course. Yes.
Okay, that's where I just wanted to dot i's, cross t's
I think
before we're all
this-
called at
yeah,
7
this
o'clock
works.
next
There's no
week.
way you can get that done in less than 2 weeks.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, that's just, I wanted to double check on that.
Not
And
in
that's
a
out of the
quality
general
way.
fund.
No.
So, Mr. Mayor, then, is that, am I understanding correctly? It's not that we're setting aside, but the 2.8 million is up for further future deliberation. And so you are putting this forward because you're okay with the $421,000 coming out of the 20%.
Correct.
So if we spend in the coming months to year the 2.8 million, our fund balance won't be down to 20%, it'll be down to 18% or what it's like.
It'll be down to
18.5 or
18%, and
something
it
like
can't
that.
go below 15, it
Right.
can't go below 15%, by the end of the fiscal year, though. Even with this is put aside, and you put it over here, and you come up, you could be up at 25%. I don't know what the end of the fiscal year is going to be yet. I don't have a clue until the auditors get done, and that's going to be in January.
And that, so I guess like the continuation of that to me, and that's fine and it's allowable, but it opens us up, not in a bad way, but we need to be prepared then when Friends of the Senior Center say, well, how about the 15% up to 18.5%? It used to be that, oh, we weren't really going to spend below 20%. Not written, not really said, just kind of like, yeah, well, if it's above 20%, we're going to spend that because then it might fluctuate down. But now we're saying, yeah, but there's this special money too, between 15 and 20%, and that's available for projects. If you have a
Correct.
really good project and you want to bring it forward, this chunk of money is available now.
But not really. Only if we...
We're not saying that directly, but indirectly to the public, I think that's what we're saying.
Well, if we don't spend it, then the fund balance goes up more, then we have more set
No,
aside.
we don't need to spend it, but if somebody has a fantastic project, like the
Well-
senior center, like a parking garage, whatever it is, there's some significant money available.
And it's up to us, it'll be up
Right,
to,
it's up
it's
to
up to
us.
this body, not just us, I said the body, who's ever sitting in this,
Yep.
in these chairs, to make that determination.
Fair enough.
Is it safe to make the motion as read by the mayor?
Yes.
Fine.
Which I don't want to.
Okay,
Stumble
there's the
through
motion.
4
Is there
paragraphs.
support for that motion?
Support.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to speak on that, please?
Justin Reed, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm sorry. Didn't forget the address. 630 Casualty Drive, Apartment 1B, city resident. So, upon the improvement enhancement on Chart Trail between Del Mar and an extension to that, this is a project to enhance mobility in Traverse City, since the Chart Trail is used quite often. And the fact that you have MDOT willing to say, okay, we can go ahead, there might be some extra money that might be laying around, we can help with that. And also, if it doesn't get done, material cost goes up, and you'd rather do it right now versus later on when it costs twice as much. Thank you.
Caroline Kennedy, resident, 1925 Seneca Street. I'm here in support of this extension of the chart trail and this segment especially. I'm an East Side resident, as you know, and I don't know how often you're on your bike, Mr. Mayor, but I'm looking
Often
forward.
enough.
I'm looking forward to any improvement we can get from the east side through Murchie Bridge to the senior center is a pretty modest segment, but it's always been one that's a little bit hazardous to navigate through. I think that the amount of benefit that you get there is considerable, especially because of that connection to the senior center and right there by the Great Lakes Maritime Institution. And the timing, I think, is probably one of the most important things to be thinking about and coordinating with the MDOT project. And so I'd like you to take those things into consideration. Even with, that flexibility of the 15 to 20% in the budget, it's always nice to be on that very conservative side. But there is some flexibility there for special circumstances, and I think that coordination with MDOT at this time is important. I think we've seen what happens in the past when we delay things, and I think this should not be delayed any further. Thank you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 College Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I've been dead set against this project from the beginning, even though I've always supported TART. I don't know where in the world the magnitude of what they're trying to do is not supported by any evidence that I can find. The whole idea apparently came out from some data mining that TART came up with, saying that there's 1 million users a year, and I'm on that trail on my bike 7 days a week, have been for 20 years, Sunday through Saturday, and only during the Cherry Festival is it ever what I would call crowded. And that's because people are just milling back and forth across the open space by the food court. That's it. I can live with that because I can ride my bike on the grass around them, and runners can run around them. What you're doing in the whole project, not just what we're talking tonight, is the entire narrow strip of our bayfront, which is one of the most key parts of this, is a very narrow strip that every community organization spent 30 years getting the businesses off there, the railroad tracks off there, with a green space. And this is going to be 16 foot wide. They're widening the highway. But that's along the beachfront. That's a different argument. The argument tonight is, point number one, the DDA is going to put in $20,000. I don't know if it's TIF 97 or it's out of their taxing fund, which I don't think it's supposed to be. As TIF 97 is against the law to spend it outside of a TIF district, and TIF 97 ends at the west side of Murchie Bridge. So I don't know where that came from. Number two, it took me forever to read through the consultant's diagrams but they intend to cut down 18 trees between Murchie Bridge and the east side of Senior Center Park. And the only trees that could be possibly talking about are on Sunset Park, and right next to it is Senior Center Park. In addition to Senior Center, that is a park that's heavily used. Now, I can see the idea of improving the trail, as Mr. Warner had mentioned, for students and travelers, because between Garfield and the senior center on both sides of the street, those sidewalks are totally inadequate. That isn't the point of what is being done here. So I'm just totally against this project, and I wish you would kill it. And you have to remember, you might have a new commission in November, and they might kill the whole thing. And from the public's point of view, I don't think there's any buy-in at all that I've seen. I went to one meeting over here in the training room, and there was maybe 12 people, and they all seemed to be from TART, and they were telling the consultant what to do and how to do
Buckholzer,
it.
your time for comment has elapsed. Thank you for your comments.
Anybody else?
I'm Bill Calcutt at 1141 Peninsula Drive. I'm a city resident. And I guess for clarity tonight, what the issue is this RAP 2.0 only relate to the expansion of the trail from Murchie Bridge to the senior center? It's not anything to do with going beyond the senior center to Peninsula Drive. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, then I'll reserve my comments, but in the future you can plan to hear from me if we start talking about Peninsula Drive and the dangers I think it will lead to along that residential strip. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, bring it back to the commission. Any other comments, thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Reading through this in our packet, I was very concerned about the tree removal, particularly it looks like there are 6 trees of a 19 to 36 inch diameter that are planned to be removed in this expansion. Those in particular are of concern to me. I am not an arborist. I don't know how long a tree has to live, depending on variety, to get to 36 inches. But I think we would really miss those on our waterfront. And if there were any way to preserve them, I would strongly encourage. I will say that this was something that I talked to a lot of people about and and what was really compelling to me is my in-laws who are in their 80s. They live at the base of Old Mission Peninsula. My mother-in-law is a Northern Michigan native, and they've been city residents for over 35 years. They recently had to rent a storage facility on the west side of town because they felt at their age it was too dangerous for them to traverse the TART trail from their home on the base of Old Mission to their preferred route, which is to ride their bikes to my mother-in-law's hometown of the home village of Sutton's Bay. So when we talk about equity, when we talk about people who deserve to be served, I don't disagree that we need better connection to the loop. But especially as we are building a new senior center and finally giving that back to that demographic of our town who has done so much to build this community, it certainly seems to me that we have improvements we can make in this area for their safety and comfort. My mother-in-law specifically cited this area outside the Delamar as being very treacherous, and frankly, my father was injured there when he was just barely a senior while on the TART trail on his rollerblades. Whether or not he should have been rollerblading at that age, that's something else to be determined. But I would say that the tree removal of those larger sized trees is something that is really distressing to me to see in this proposal. And if this moves forward, I would hope that there would be a way to address that.
Okay.
I think Julie Clark wanted to address that.
Yes, you may.
So these are construction engineering documents. We have had opportunities in the field when we're out there to avoid a tree here or there. And we just experienced that in Acme where we were able to move the trail if at all possible. We will be doing that. That's in-field construction that we will definitely take that into account. Certainly, it's not our desire to take down large trees, and we will also be looking at making sure that we're planting large, what will be canopy street trees as well. But we will absolutely be looking as we go into construction, if it's possible, to minimize those.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's also talking about tree removal.
Hang on one second. You need something you need to say? I'll entertain it, to let you. Mitch, just hang on one second, please.
My name's Thomas Pangborn. I live at 933 Peninsula Drive and am a city resident. I have a question as far as this process and the Front Street and how this impacts everything. I believe it was like 25, maybe it was 30 years ago, there was a proposal to redo Front Street, but it fell apart because the city had to grant part of Sunset Park Senior Center, I think it's 8 feet, and it got voted down, so it all went away. Is that issue still with us on this project, or is there no conveyance from the city to MDOT, or I'm not sure?
No, there's no conveyance to MDOT. This
But
is
you know, anybody else remember this?
Oh, yeah, I was around.
This is a
That's what I was
workaround.
thinking.
Oh, I was around. Quite painful.
Just I was curious. Yeah, exactly.
Quite painful. No.
Just a question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, going on tree removal, I should hope that efforts are taken when this actually gets ground truthed and we start putting it into place, because there are a couple trees that, just cross-checking the maps on Google Earth, that say a 30-inch oak seems to be far enough away that from the current roadway that you can move it inland without necessitating taking out the tree. Maybe you have to have a slight cut around that tree. But then also there's a 30-inch Maple Street in front of a hotel that is mostly dead at this point. So yes, it is a large tree, but it is something that if it was a normal city street tree would probably be taken out anyway and replanted by this point. There are a couple errors I've noticed on the map. Notably, in front of Delamar, it has the only apple tree along this strip labeled as an 8-inch maple. So maybe that's a typo, or maybe somebody was just taking a very quick look at things. But I am relieved that most of the trees that it's shown as being removed are of the sub 18-inch, and I'd say many of them are smaller than a foot diameter, and generally trees that, yes, they might be a nice tree that provides some shade, but isn't a canopy height tree, and something that if it and when it gets replaced will be able to grow to that same size within a relatively short order. We're not going to need 80 years to get to a tree of that size.
Okay. Any other comments from the City Commission? Okay, we have a motion and we have support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes. Okay. Okay, one last business item. Well, I got two last business items. The other one is an appointment to the Downtown Development Authority Board, an ad hoc committee consisting of myself, Commissioner Warner, and Commissioner Stanley are recommending that a seat that was held by Michael Brodsky, who was a downtown resident and moved out of the downtown, is to be filled by Mr. Ed Slosky, and that term would continue and expire on September 15th, 2027. And then Mr. Brodsky would fill a term that would expire on September 15th, 2024, and it's a seat that was previously held by Damian Lockhart. So I could make my own motion because I did the report, but I'd rather somebody else make the motion that was on the committee. I was the chair, so.
I'll make the motion that the mayor's appointment of Ed Slosky to the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors for the term expiring September 15th, 2023, and a subsequent full term expiring September 15th, 2027, seat previously held by Michael Brodsky, and Michael Brodsky to the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors for the term expiring September 15th, 2024, seat previously held by Damian Lockhart, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Lewis, Commissioner Werner, and Commissioner Stanley, be approved.
Okay, got a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Okay. Is there anyone
Quick comment.
Yes.
That, I'll be voting no. They're both good candidates. I support Mr. Slosky, but I cannot support Mr. Brodsky.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, with that, is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
And Mayor Lewis.
Yes. Okay. So folks don't have to stay if they don't want. There is no reserved public comment, but is there any general public comment?
Talking to us, we get to go?
Huh? No, you don't get to go
So
in.
folks didn't want to stay.
No. Public, out there, those folks.
Oh, I'm gonna.
Okay. And that way, if they want to hang around, you're more than welcome to listen to the interviews.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, city resident. I was very, very disappointed. We had a open house at the clubhouse over at 105 Hall Street. I know that the city commission can get busy, and there's other meetings and there's other appointments that you have to be at. But nobody out of the city commission, not one of you, took 15 minutes to come down to the clubhouse and see what that program is about. Because mental health in Traverse City and the surrounding townships are a very important thing. Thank you, and that's all I have.
All right.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I just want to continue my thing about the trees that are going to get cut down. I had to have enlarged the drawings that are on your packet this big and still use a magnifying glass. And they have two different sizes of trees with a different configuration in the left corner of them. And if there's an X through it, they're going to cut it down. And it's hard to orientate yourself on where you are in the proposed thing, but I counted 18 trees that were going to be cut down. And that's preposterous. Another thing that I didn't have time to mention is in Sunset Park, their plan is to have a wide sidewalk right down the middle. And it just makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you got a driveway on one side and you got a driveway on the other side, and that's a narrow park. It's not very heavily used except people who go there to picnic, because the water on the beach is pretty nasty with floating wood debris. So the senior center park, when they put in, and that is a park with a building on it that's a senior center, but that's been a park since the 1930s. And when they move that building, they're going to move the tennis courts up toward the highway. They're talking about even more sidewalks. They're putting in more parking. And this proposed walkway is going to be 16 feet wide total. So I mean, just think about the expanse of hard surface. It's going to be just unpleasant. And what's supposed to be our waterfront, which is almost 2 miles of park. I'm all for, having great transportation trails, but this just got out of hand. The necessity doesn't meet the project. It just isn't there. Everything east of this, all these people left, everything east of the senior center, I totally agree. Something really needs to have money put into it, but not along our waterfront. There's just not enough room to accommodate it, and just not enough people use it to justify what they're going to do. And this is only one of several sections of this plan. The total cost for this is somewhere between $6 and $8 million. So they're going to be coming back to the well again and trying to dip for some more loot. So just keep that in mind before there's a chance to adjust what they're trying to do to downsize it, something, but get control of it, because the public really doesn't know about it. And I haven't seen any significant buy-in to this project and the purpose of this project and the enormity of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. We'll leave it for the city commission to make any public comments they want to make, after this. What's going to happen next? That concludes our business portion of it, other than the interviews, which there may be action taken. Let's take about a 10-minute break before we start that, in case there needs to be some setup. But I also want to let everyone know that the situation that was on there 2 weeks ago, or about, or last week, is the same right now. You are interviewing someone that I will have to recuse myself from this, but I'm not leaving. I'll be sitting over here listening. So, but I need to stay out of the fray from that. So Ms. Shamrow will be taking over conducting the meeting.
Can we make it a 5-minute break?
Let's make it a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Some of these people may want to take, get some water before you grill them to death.
Well, for grilling, then let's let them marinate.
And as we have mentioned at the top, we are right now going into the 3 finalists that we had selected at the June 12th meeting for the search for the executive search for the new city manager. So what we will do is start, and we're going to go, as it was just told to me, in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll start with Walsh Municipal Services, if you'd like to come up and start your presentation. And to all the fellow commissioners, I think we're going to ask that you take notes to allow them to do their whole presentation, and then save questions for the end. Because this is a final round, we didn't do the questions in advance, because obviously we're going to want to drill down if we have questions based on each one. But I guess I would say we are still dealing with HR matters, so let's just keep that in mind as we ask questions off the cuff.
Good evening, Frank Walsh, Walsh Municipal Services. We're out of Okemos, Michigan. First of all, I want to thank you for having us this evening, especially the committee members, Chair Stanley and Commissioner Colbert and Commissioner Wilson, and bringing us back. We're really excited to be here. My wife and I have always had an affinity for Traverse City. Growing up, kind of wondered why. Why do we keep coming back to Traverse City? And then, just a personal story. I'm an adopted kid, and in 2019. Took the step to find my biological family at the age of 53 years old. And come to find out, my entire biological family on my dad's side is all in Traverse City. So we grew up kind of coming here and it's just never knowing why. So it's just kind of an ironic twist that happened. So I've gone through some points that were asked here by Christine for us to go through, and I'll go through them as quick as I can because I know we're on a timer. I talked about my firm. We've been in business for 26 years now in Michigan. We've been asked a lot to do recruitments outside of Michigan, and that's just not our business model. Our business model, we're a proud Michigan firm and will remain that way. Although we do a lot of recruitments that get us involved in national candidates. In fact, just today, we placed a candidate from Texas down in Caledonia Township, down by Grand Rapids. Our search methodology is kind of interesting. And what we do is we use a matrix. And we take that matrix, and we typically don't do this until after we've been hired, but because we're here tonight, I thought I would share with you how we do this. So we take a matrix and we take your mission statement. And your mission statement, which talks about the environment, it talks about sustainability, it talks about projects on the infrastructure, preserving and enhancing infrastructure, and all the things that I'm not trying to pretend I know your goals, but I picked out what I could. You put those into a matrix, and then I spent about 20 hours over the last few days of putting that together in a matrix with the 1,500 or so resumes that we have throughout the country. And so with that, we come out with, and again, this typically doesn't happen until the end of the process, but what we come up with is a list of candidates. We come up with a list of candidates based on the matrix. And we have it right here. Here's the 10 candidates based on your mission statement that I would go after. 10 national candidates, California, Wisconsin, Washington, Connecticut, Iowa, Florida, and then the top 10 Michigan candidates that we would also go after. So that's a list that we do for every community. We get turned down a lot, but we're very aggressive. I don't know that you'll find a more aggressive firm than our firm. So our search methodology really focuses on a matrix of connecting what the city's mission and goals are with the candidates that are out there. And that's how we found, for a small community down in Grand Rapids, that's how we found this candidate out of Elm Tree, Texas. Guess what? She's from Lowell, just 15 minutes away from Grand Rapids. We're proud of our diversity as well. We placed our 17th female. I don't know if anyone can say that, just in the last 2.5 years in Michigan. Our network of candidates. I'm already talking to 7 candidates. My name was in the paper associated with this recruitment. I've had 7 candidates, 5 in the state, 2 out of state. They're already talking to me about their interest in Traverse City. I want to tell you, this is a premier community. It's a world-class community, but this will not be easy. People sit back and think a recruitment for a city manager is easy if you're in a premier world-class community like this. No recruitments are easy. We will be very aggressive in our approach if we're selected. There are 4 state committees, our 340 members. 4 committees, one of them being the Member Success Committee in the state of Michigan. I happen to chair that committee. So I'm very much involved with the Michigan membership of managers. There isn't a manager in Michigan that I don't know. On the redos, how many we had to redo with a year guarantee? Very proud to say 26 years, 2, just over 1%. I believe our matrix helps us get it right the first time. How will I sell Traverse City? You know, we've done Charlevoix, we've done Marquette, we've done Alpena, we've done Saugatuck, we've done Grand Haven, we've done a lot of wonderful waterfront communities. And I hope you talk to the references of each one of them. But I would shy away from just using the waterfront and all of that for Traverse City. I would go more, if I was using this and working with you, I would focus more on a family-friendly focus approach, a year-round community. I want people to see Traverse City who don't live in the state as more than just the summer months, because it is so much more. And that's how I would focus my recruitment on this would be family-friendly, year-round, unbridled recreation and educational opportunities. What sets us apart? That's a tough question to ask, especially when you go first. You know, when you go first, you never do well, right? Well, flip of the coin. Our experience, 30-some years of experience of doing this, the diversity, our reputation, and I want to go through real quickly. Here's our recruiting. On the left side of the screen, our candidates that we have placed. On the right side of the screen, our candidates that we have worked with and got into recruitments. Can we recruit nationally? I hope at the end of this presentation you don't see us as a mom and pop shop. I'm proud of what we have, and we are not going to change our business model. But as you can see, this is really ironic. Just in the last 2 months, we have placed candidates from Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Ohio, just in the last 2 or 3 months. And this shows you the candidates that we work with nationally. The stars are people that we've brought to Michigan, and the dots are candidates that we work with who are presently looking to come to Michigan. 85% of candidates, this is what we got, 85% of Michigan candidates in the last 3 to 5 years are Michigan city managers. We all want a national recruitment. I've done lots of national recruitment, successful ones, but the facts say 85% chance that your manager will come from Michigan. I work with cities and villages and townships who say, we want a Michigan manager because they know the DER, they know Eagle, they know brownfields, they know TIF funding, so that's what we want. Some want a national recruitment. And there I go. Again, we've been very successful nationally. We are not just a Michigan firm. A very important thing that we do. And even if you don't hire us, I would use this. This is a candidate questionnaire that at the end of the day, the elected officials rather see this than the resumes. They get so much more out of this. This is very useful, and I tend not to show it publicly. Question number 5 is critical. Question 5 is critical, and make sure you go through that with whoever you use. Is there anything in your background that you want to share now that if it comes out later would be detrimental and embarrassing to the city of Traverse City? Because you'd be surprised how many candidates get through the point of you selecting them and they haven't had a strong background check done. That questionnaire covers the city. And I'll tell you what, it's been very, very helpful to some communities. Summary. Our communication. You will hear from us every Friday during the recruitment. All of you, not just the mayor, all of you will know exactly where you are every Friday. And you can ask any client we've had in 26 years, do we miss a Friday? No. You'll know exactly where you are and a summary of the candidates. Cheerleader. I'm very passionate about what I do. And if you talk to the people I've worked with in Michigan and beyond Michigan, they will tell you, I become your biggest cheerleader. I'm very passionate about that, and I will tell you, I will be very aggressive in my approach. I get turned down a lot, but I also find some real jewels out there. Beyond the aggressive, we will cast the net. We will cast the net way beyond Michigan, just like we did today, drawing a young lady out of Texas who's going to be able to move home and be with her family. Why do we find her? Because we have regional partners throughout the country in 17 different states. I have colleagues that we go back and forth with on candidates. And how we got her was going down to Texas and talking to our recruiter there and saying, hey, we're looking for this, this, and this, and somebody from Michigan, preferably west side of Michigan. That's how I got her name. She was a passive candidate. She wasn't looking for a job. And we really focus on passive candidates. And you know what? Traverse City is going to need to do that. Because, you know, a lot of candidates are going to think, I'm not good enough for Traverse City. I'm not strong enough to go to Traverse City. So it's going to take a recruiter going in there and saying, look, you can do this. It's a great community, but you have the strength to do it. And I ran into that, some of the Grand Havens and Portages and some of the very large communities and very highly sought after communities that I've done. And finally, beyond all casting the net and the passive candidates and that cheerleading effect that you'll get from me and the passion, finally is the cost. I think we offer as much, I won't say more, I'll leave it at that, because I'm not going to take anything away from Amy or Ryan, but I think when everything's done, we have a much lower cost, but we don't want to be hired on cost. We want to be hired on our performance and our reputation. And if you check it out in Michigan, you'll find it is extremely a good brand. That's all I have. I hope I stayed under 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
All right, and I will open up to my colleagues. I know I jotted down a couple questions, but I want to start with you all for your chance to ask. This is not a shy group, so come on, guys. They'll give the wrong impression already, or we're going to get the wrong candidates.
I have a question. You said twice I get turned down a lot. I'm curious why you think that is.
Because I'm very aggressive and I ask a lot. I do something that's called a Sunday Blitz. So on Sunday nights, not the first week, because I don't want to appear like we're too anxious or not having candidates, week 2 and week 4 on Sunday nights, I send a blitz out, and I'll send that out to, in this case, it would be not everyone, because not everyone's qualified to come to Traverse City. But I have a list of my A list and different list. The A list would get this blitz, community profile, a bunch of stuff about Traverse City. I'd send it to them personally, not just in a group setting. Penny's probably tired of getting my blitzes over her career. But we blitz out, and then we blitz nationally to the candidates, again, that fit the matrix that we go through. I've already identified a lot of candidates that you would want to go after through the matrix that we use. And we use that matrix on every recruitment we do.
And do you do all the work?
I do.
You're a one-man shop.
I'm not a one-man shop. I have someone who does social media checks, reference checks, marketing for us, website. I have all that stuff covered. You know, I could have 20 people join me. I could. And then I would do 200 searches a year. Instead of I did 24 last year, I do more than anyone else in Michigan. And I know you're a one-man shop. You're not. We could bring a lot more people on. But you know what? I want to be responsible. When my name's on that, I want to be responsible for the recruitment. And if you talk to any city, any township or village that we worked with, you will find out what the results you would get if you hire us. I'm not interested in growing the company. I've had lots of offers, but I like what we're doing and I like our reputation.
Yeah, thank you.
Mitch?
Yes. In your bid proposal, you had a proposed schedule that started with firm selection on June 5th. It is now June 19th. And would that push back your schedule by the proportionate 2 weeks?
Yeah, the biggest thing will be is to getting together right away and get the community profile. And I think I included Grand Haven's profile in there so you can see the work that we do and the RFP that I submitted. Yes, it would push it back, but here's the key thing. We can't miss, we won't miss next month's conference. It is a haven for recruiting. I will be there all 4 days. And we want to make sure we have the profile there. I just happen to leave it on tables when no one's looking. I leave the profile there for people to see that. So Traverse City needs to be marketed heavily at the managers conference at the end of July in Frankenmuth.
Okay.
But we will meet the September deadline.
Okay. It could make it a little tricky considering just how busy the start of July is for this city.
We
can manage that.
We're aggressive and we will make it. And we keep to our time. We set a time, and every Friday you'll know where we're at.
Okay. Other questions? Nice pointing at you, Tim. Was that just because you moved in your chair? Okay.
Tim always has something to say.
If there aren't other questions right now, though, feel free. I just wanted to give everybody else the first shot. I had a couple quick ones. So you have talked a bit about your national recruitment and the resumes you have on file. I mentioned 17 states, but and you've alluded to this, and we would drill more into it if you were chosen. But the environment and the sustainability and other aspects are very important to us. We have our own utility that it's important to. So what if our perfect candidate is in Vermont and that's not one of your 17 states? I guess I'm asking, how do you make sure that you're encompassing all that we're looking for in every possible corner of this country that they might be hiding in?
Yeah, and I can't tell you that I do reach everyone. I would not promise that. But I will tell you that our net will be cast just as far as anyone else. It's been proven. And we have recruiters all over the state, all over the country that we work with. That's how we filled 4 national recruitments in the last 2 months. This is never, I will tell you though, that's an anomaly. It's never happened where we've had 4 out-of-state candidates in a row get hired into Michigan. A lot of people are not wanting to come into Michigan. We will advertise nationally in the ICMA, so anyone who's looking for a job nationally, that's the first place they go. And the other consultants are going to do the same thing. They're going to go through ICMA.
Great. Any other questions from my fellow commissioners here? All right. Well, thank you for your time and for your presentation. And you all can still stay in the room. As they're in the room while you're doing your presentation, you can stay in the room while they're doing theirs. But we're going to kind of ask that you all hang tight if you want. I would prefer, I guess I'm going to put this out there if any commissioners agree, that at the final, before we make any motion, if we do decide to take action tonight, we do open for public comment. But I would prefer that everyone presenting tonight, to be fair, keeps their presentations to what you're doing right now and not use public comment for that time. So I would just give you right now 1 or 2 sentences if you wanted to close up, or you can go ahead.
I think I've said enough, and I want to defer to the others so they have an equal amount of time. But just thank you. Trust me, we will work hard for you. We have a great reputation, and you will not be disappointed if you put your trust in us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry, I accidentally got knocked out of my iPad here, so now I'm behind. Of course, that would happen right now. Sorry. So our next will be from GovHR USA, please. Sorry about the delay on that while I reopened, but now I can actually view your presentation as well.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. My name is Ryan Cotton with GovHR USA. I can say it's a special honor because I was born in Munson Hospital. My father used to fly out of the airport with the Civil Air Patrol, and it'd be such a privilege to work for the city of Traverse City. I've been in public life my entire career, city manager around the country, assistant city manager, but the last 30 years been in Michigan, in Grand Haven, Spring Lake, and I retired from the city of Holland. I should say I partly retired because I enjoy doing this as part of the GovHR team. There are 37 of us nationwide. We are a national firm with a local focus. We're very strong in the Midwest. I think there's a slide here later on that shows you all the places that we have done recruitments. Over 1,000 successful recruitments. We're a women-owned firm, and we collaborate, and we have the latest in social media, networking, and other tools to make sure that the right people know about the right communities, and Traverse City is one of those communities. You know, it was mentioned that going first is hard. I think being in the middle is maybe a little more challenging, so we're going to make sure that you know everything you need to know in between the others. So, national firm, local focus. We are viewed as a trusted and ethical partner for our client communities. In what you received is a list of several pages of testimonials. There's 2 excerpted in this PowerPoint. You can count on us to stay with you as long as you need for the right reasons and to get the right person so that you are 100% satisfied at the end of the process. And you can count on us being both user-friendly, we're professional, and we are that way to everyone we work with, including the candidates, because they deserve respect and to be treated with that kind of professionalism so that they continue to work with us in other recruitments, and they most certainly do. I was an adjunct instructor for 20 years for Grand Valley and Hope College. So there's 400 students that I helped teach when they were younger, and now they're mid-career. We're in contact with each other all the time. LinkedIn is a very important tool, and they'll know about these recruitments that we are doing. I want to make sure that you know that there's no travel costs for our firm. The reason is I live in Grand Haven, and I'm in northern Michigan all the time. I've been here for decades. I remember bringing my kids to the train over there, and now I'm a ski patroller at Crystal Mountain. So we're learning the bike patrol business as well for Crystal Mountain. So whether it's the Borden River or Crystal Mountain, there's reasons why we're here anyway, and it'd be very easy not to have any travel costs for your services. On a personal level, I want you to know that Traverse City is a premier community. It'll be an easy community to talk about, yet we need to talk about all the seasons. So I'm familiar, as you just heard from me, about northern Michigan and all the seasons. It's fun. There's lots of things to do, lots of extracurricular activities, exercise, and we want to make sure that candidates realize that, and their families. And that's why we do a recruitment brochure that's very attractive. You have a copy. We also make sure that we communicate in a way that the families can stay with the process, and we encourage the families to come for the final interviews, at least the spouse, so that they know and are then supportive of what they need to be for long-term success for you as well. I've looked at your strategic plan. I've looked at your budget. I've read in the Record Eagle articles about what you're looking for in the next city manager. And I can tell you that there are many communities and many professionals that have people that can serve your needs that we will be happy to place for you. So in conclusion, I want to just, in the few seconds I have left, want you to see these are testimonials from Kalamazoo County, just finished up with San Jose, California. You can see that we go the extra mile throughout the entire search process. Our social media connects with 15,000 people that regularly visit our website, and we do targeted email blitzes from anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 for people who meet our profiles, similar to the Matrix, but done on a larger scale. And lastly, there's the old-fashioned pick up the phone and make personal emails and do personal LinkedIns and have conversations and make sure people understand all the inside news and knowledge they have to make this the person that you want to have here for many years to come. Once again, it'd be an honor, it'd be a privilege. I'd be delighted to serve Traverse City in this capacity, and it'd be fun to be back again, and again, to make things work for you, as long as you need, no matter how long you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Again, I will open up to my fellow commissioners here if you have any questions.
I have a question. You had initially replied to apply for the interim city manager position here, and I'm curious what your thinking was to first want to be a candidate and now want to recruit for a candidate.
I was in Seattle when I got the phone call, so I was with the family, and my wife was actually at the school with our granddaughter at that moment. So I said, well, yes, I'd love to serve Traverse City, subject to family considerations. I did not realize your meeting was that night, so had I known that, I would have said, hey, don't mention me yet. So I was surprised to read in the newspaper.
Nice.
And the very next day, I was on the phone to Penny after my wife and I had talked about the other responsibilities we have this summer. that would preclude me being here every day all the time. I've done 4 interims. I enjoyed them. Traverse City would have been a wonderful one. I did ask Penny, I think, if there was any way that this could wait until the winter months, because I'm up here anyway, right? But I understand you needed to go forward. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, and would you be the person doing the work for this?
Well, we have the 37 consultants. We communicate with each other weekly. We have a Zoom call, and we're interacting all the time. We have an office staff full-time of around 14, and they're in Chicago. And once again, we communicate all the time, and we support each other. And there's the recruitment coordinator team. There's the reference check team. As was noted, you don't want any surprises. The question that was asked, we ask personally, and we have a conversation about what that means, because sometimes people, what they put down, maybe there was an allegation that was unfounded. We don't know the rest of the story. So we present to you, usually in closed session, everything we know about every candidate. Usually there's 8 to 10 that you then decide who you want to bring in for interviews. We recommend 2 interviews because we think this is the time to be exhaustive and to spend the energy necessary so that there are no surprises, so you know everything you need to know. If you want personality profiles, tests, a variety of instruments, we've used all of them. We can build that into the process. We suggest meet and greets, but that's optional. We suggest, you're not going to get any extra bills except for the personality test where there's out-of-pocket costs. We just believe in following you, giving you what you look for, what you're thinking about. And it's amazing what we have done way beyond what we've said we would do because that community wanted it. Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas is an example, Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we'll be there depending on what your search committee needs or what you collectively want, and we'll get that done. I want to say one last thing, and that is I'm partly retired. That does not mean I'm on the golf course or fishing. I don't do either one of those well. What I really enjoy doing is looking for candidates for great communities. And you will have my passion and my time, no matter how long it takes. It far exceeds what you might even imagine, so that you end up with the end of the process being something that you're satisfied with, and you're going to tell others that you're satisfied and be happy, as well as the candidate and the families of the candidate.
Thank you. Other questions? Mitch?
Yes. I appreciate in the bid packet you had a long list of communities that your firm has successfully placed candidates for, it's impressive how many places you have successfully worked with. However, I do observe a number of repeat customers, which if a city or municipality is satisfied with the work one time, why not hire them again? But if, say, Adrian is hiring a city manager in 2018 and then winds up in the same position in 2020, then what steps are you taking to provide quality candidates that are going to last a longer period of time than just a couple years?
Your question is exactly the reason why we do more than the questionnaire when we're trying to find out about the background of candidates. In that case, the individual was so superlative, and I hope he's watching, or I'll tell him I said that about him, that he was recruited away by Livingston County. And that county had a school system that they had left to go to Adrian. And after a while, the family thought, well, we really want to be back in that school system. So it was a combination of him being called by another search firm, them offering substantially more funding, and his family's desire for a different school. They were homeschooling because they ended up not being satisfied with Adrian. And that's why. So sometimes that happens, unrelated to our services. In fact, it was that we were so good, in my opinion, that he was in Adrian in the first place.
Go ahead, Mike.
So, and this may have been a miscommunication in reviewing the bids from the RFP, but when going back to our May 22nd packet, I'm looking at the comments from on the sheet, and it's indicating that your total bid was not inclusive of travel. So I want to confirm, I know you said it several times, that for this search, there would not be travel expenses related to your services. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's very easy for me to piggyback any trips I need here based on other things I'll be doing in northern Michigan anyway.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I guess actually, is there anybody else who had questions? Okay. So I had a couple of questions, there's different ways, obviously, to do a search. We've had executive level search related to the city in the last couple of years, not in the city with our utility. And so how do you go about, I guess, doing the updates, giving updates? Is that something where you wait for direction from the ad hoc or the management, or do you have a set schedule? And I apologize if it was in the previous proposal, but I forgot to look it over today, and I have the memory of a goldfish right now. So please let me know.
Well, first, there's no document that goes out that represents Traverse City without your prior review, edits, and re-review based on those edits, number one. Number two, the number of phone calls, contacts, emails are reported to you, sometimes in the middle of the process, always at the end of the process, so you know exactly the effort that went into it. Usually, I wait about 2 weeks before I give you your first Friday update. Sometimes it's Monday update if we got the ad out on a Monday. So that's how I do it. And then there's a point of contact. There's oftentimes phone calls in between those updates because those updates are written so that they can be shared. And then as we approach sooner, it's weekly. Closer to the date, and then, of course, the day after the deadline, we're in communication, and you know exactly what's going to happen. By the way, I didn't mention this, but you have a calendar with your hire, within our hire, within a week or several days, you'll have a calendar that shows everything that's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And that's for everyone's benefit. It's for the candidate's benefit so he can line up his family and travel plans. It's for your benefit so you can line up your meeting schedule. And it's for our benefit so we can make sure that we're working to meet all those timetables. So that calendar will be fully fleshed out, and there will be no having to guess or look at try to scramble and get some meetings in place. Or worse is a delay in a meeting. It's a competitive environment, and most of our candidates have other options. And some of these, they don't want to lose a bird in hand. So it's important that we stay ahead of other competing locations where they might want to relocate.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
All right, and I offered before, I'll offer to everybody. Do you have a sentence or two that you wanted to use in closing? I want to give that since we ask questions in between, but if not, you're no harm, no foul.
Thank you very much. We're a national firm with a local focus. You can trust us. We're ethical in all respects, that we're very professional. We believe in diversity, equity, inclusion. We advertise in ICMA, but also all of the journals that relate to Hispanic, Black, women publications. And we do very, very, very strong networking through all kinds of sources, face-to-face, on the phone, social media. And we have a guarantee that you'll be satisfied, both our written guarantee and my personal guarantee. It would be an honor and privilege.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we'll have Amy Sell present next. And for everybody's refresher, her presentation came to us in an email from Sarah Lutz due to a little miscommunication from staff, so it's not in the packet, but we do have that to follow along.
Very odd.
All right.
Great, thank you.
So, thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be with two other esteemed firms here. So my goal in the next 4 minutes and 50 seconds is to just let you understand a little bit about my approach to see if it's going to be the right fit for you. We were given very good instructions about what to cover, so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, our approach, results, superpowers, what differentiates us, as well as how we would sell the city. A little bit about my firm. This is a picture of us. We're very diverse. We're all based in Michigan. You need a big team, I think, because we are very thorough. And that's going to be a theme you'll see. We spend about 250 to 300 hours on the process. So there's a big team that comes into play that I will be leading. We're diverse, but again, very passionate about Michigan and supporting communities like Traverse City. Key components of the process that I'm going to go through include aligning on that vision, marketing, assessing, interviewing, negotiating, and onboarding. We're very committed to a successful process. One thing that we do that might be a little bit different is we co-create a matrix, rubric with you. So we do individual one-on-one interviews with everybody on the commission, as well as key staff members and other stakeholders, up to 30 one-on-one interviews that we then consolidate back into a document that talks about the ideal and must-have traits and bring it back to you all to review and consent upon, especially around areas like communication, management skills, strategic thinking experiences. I've been watching quite a few city commission meetings. I know some of the challenges and opportunities that your community has, and finding someone that has demonstrated expertise and experience in those areas is something that we like to co-create and then bring back to you to make sure that we're aligned so the candidates that we do present have those qualities and experiences. Then we market. So as was mentioned, yes, ICMA is not a great opportunity to get the word out. We also use strategic government resources, newsletter. We have our own database and newsletter of about 1,000 nationwide municipal candidates, as well as social media presence on LinkedIn that includes over 14,000. So we have a very strong social media presence as well, and 4 members of my team have LinkedIn recruiter licenses. So we're also aggressive, not to steal Frank's word there, but we do want to really go after candidates so that we can get the right fit. Assessing is something that we do in a very thorough manner, and you all will see this information. And obviously, we review the resume, we have them complete a written survey, we do video interviews, phone interviews, reference checks, background checks, and a cyber review. And we provide all this information to you via a portal and provide you about a week or so to be able to review the information, see the videos, so when we come in to have that decision about which finalists to bring in, you should have a good sense of that person and what they could bring to the community. We support the interview process. We generally do interviews with the commission as well as with department heads and staff, and then often do a community reception, especially now that we can get back together as a community. We compile this information and feedback and provide it back to the commission so that you have data to help support the deliberations. Negotiating and onboarding is also that piece that we put a lot of focus into. We help provide with, in addition to helping with the negotiating, and our role can vary depending on what the attorney would like our role to be, we can support it with an onboarding checklist, and we provide a complimentary 360-degree feedback after 6 months to kind of reinforce the constructive and opportunities for improvement, especially in terms of communication. I put together a draft timeline. Assuming I had the amazing honor to be able to work with your community, we would start scheduling informational intake meetings right away so that on the July 17th meeting, we could come back with that draft rubric, the timeline to finalize, as well as a draft job posting. Then we would recruit and assess, and then these are dates that I suggested, not totally positive about which commission dates we're going to have with some of the holidays, but September would look like a good date to be able to come back and be in a good position to make an offer, hopefully. I was specifically asked about our 2-year retention rate for candidates in this area, which would be the top level in a municipality, which I calculated at 74%, over initial placement of 100%. I do have a strong record, even though I'm definitely the newer kid on the block in terms of municipal recruitment. We have quickly, I think, established a strong presence in this area, in particular to our process and our dedication for success. As I mentioned really, we're very transparent about our process. It's thorough. I mentioned most of these areas as well, and we're really, again, want that focus on onboarding to be successful. Selling Traverse City will be easy. You have amazing brands and nonprofits and a strong community of collaboration, incredible natural beauty, and some wonderful assets and opportunities as well. So I think selling will be easy and an honor. So thank you so much for your time, and happy to entertain any questions.
Open up the floor to you all.
I have two questions.
Go right ahead.
One, I'm unclear on, you indicated that you can host a community reception and gather input. Is that, where in the process is that?
During the interviews, when people would come, after you select finalists, and you would have interviews here, oftentimes I host a staff panel, a public panel with the commission, and during that commission, during the public interviews, oftentimes there are members of the public that could provide feedback, or there would be a meet and greet, and so I can gather kind of comment cards from other community members about their thoughts and compile that information and share it with you.
And the other question I had was, you said you're new to municipal recruitment.
Relatively,
What were you doing before? What was your primary focus before that?
My firm has been in existence for 8 years. The City of Holland was actually my first recruitment that I started in 2018. I had been doing 3 years of other recruitment prior to that. My firm was initially focused on providing affordable recruiting services to startups. That was a need that I saw after I left. I was with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation as their senior vice president. I had launched Pure Michigan Talent Connect. I did a lot of things to try to connect job seekers and employers. When I left MEDC, I knew there was a need for affordable recruiting services. So that was my initial focus, was on business. We had helped Grand Angels with a search. My name was put in to be considered for Holland. I got the RFP, and kind of the rest is history, but that was how we kind of fell into it, and since then we've embraced it. My parents were both elected officials in Ann Arbor. My mom was the mayor, so my dad was mayor pro tem, not at the same time. But I've always had a passion for communities, and then with my work in government, it became kind of a natural fit. So it's really an honor to be able to work with communities in this way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Go ahead, Tim.
One thing, it was a great presentation, thank you. So a lot was fantastic there. The one thing that I would like is the collection of cards of people writing comments on them. It sounds like that could go sideways potentially, that you've had positive experiences with such input.
Yeah, I think a lot of times there's a desire to have transparency in a process and to provide for people to be able to provide input. And so when it's captured in a way and then summarized and provided to the commission, I think it helps people feel like they can be a part of the process and be involved. Many of my elected officials, don't probably weigh it as much, but it can be helpful, especially if there's like an internal candidate, and that feedback can come across. So it's another piece of data that can be helpful, but it's just one piece.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'm going to jump real quick, and I'll go back to if other people had other questions, but as a clarifying point and somewhat in the vein of what Tim just asked, we did something similar during our recent search for the City Opera House new executive director. And what it was we did it as a coffee clutch kind of thing, where leaders of the community were invited, so people from the city, some from other arts organizations, et cetera. And then there was kind of a way for people to observe. So would that be part of what you're thinking of on our part, or would it be commissioners not allowed and just read the results? And also, is that what you're thinking, is it would be a kind of community leaders and not just a grand open house where, 12,000 citizens might show up?
I've done a few different things, and this is something we could work through. For the City of Holland, for instance, we had 3 panels, and they were mixed panels between the council, staff, and community members. It was that was, that worked well for them. And they had kind of a community reception. When I've done community receptions, we're lucky if there's 20 to 30 people that come and attend and do a meet and greet.
Welcome to Traverse City.
Yes.
Yes. Times 100.
Yeah, so these things would, definitely a few different options to consider.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions right now? Okay, I was going to say, and I got myself off track. So yeah, I got a quick question, and again, it was a little bit touched on by Linda, that you're relatively new in the business, and you do have a background in municipalities, and you did talk a little bit about LinkedIn and some of the more modern, lack of a better term, of ways that you recruit. And so I guess I was just kind of curious as to where do you think, how would you rate your weighing of, email versus LinkedIn versus calls? How does your team kind of approach that for a position like a city manager for a place like Traverse City?
Email and outreach via LinkedIn. The LinkedIn recruiter platform is pretty compelling in terms of being able to focus on candidates that they can indicate if they're interested in new opportunities, or we can just reach out to them direct through that. It's a great way to connect. But then we also have over 1,000 people that we've kind of built relationships with, that we reach out with to network, and they get a periodic newsletter when we have new openings. So we do kind of the blasts. But the targeted outreach on LinkedIn is pretty compelling. And then other just general networking of calling people and finding out who they know. When I did the city attorney search for the city of Ann Arbor, that was heavy networking. And I got a list of, I think I knew like every municipal attorney in the state of Michigan and beyond, to try to, because it was so networking focused. So
great. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mitch.
I'm not sure how significant this is, but at least in the package that you presented, your firm has the shortest timeline at 12 weeks. How flexible is that, and do you pride yourself on expedited timelines?
Yeah, I actually teach a class in project management, so I am very focused on efficiency for the reasons mentioned. Once this starts, it's a competitive pool, and when people put their name out publicly, oftentimes they might be considering other options, and so you want to close it as quickly as you can. So being really aggressive on the timelines is something that we try to do, and yeah, we're pretty comfortable with our ability to meet them.
Great. And any more questions? Seeing none, we'll give you again the sentence or two to wrap up with our questions in mind.
I'm just honored to be here and to be able to meet two wonderful public servants who find public servants in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to do our deliberation process. So again, this is open to the public. So my first question to the commission right now is, and this is just to let you all know, are you comfortable making a decision tonight? We do have the ability to make our next meeting, which would be July 10th, a special meeting rather than the study session would be, but we are not meeting for the next 2 weeks as it's scheduled right now, at least as a regular Monday evening, or even Tuesday with 4th of July, however that would work. Actually, I forgot the date. So first of all, are you all ready to start deliberating?
Yeah.
Great. Does anybody want to volunteer their thoughts first? I think I'd like us to set the conversation up in the idea of who you would be leaning towards first right now, and what about that agency or person was appealing to you, or what did you like that they were offering? Go ahead, Mai.
Well, I want to thank all of the firms for coming and giving wonderful presentations, and clearly having a lot of thought and time invested already in getting to know our community and being able to talk about us and market us to candidates. So thank you. And one of the things I will say that really jumped out to me as a commissioner was with Amy Sell Talent, focus on assessment of communication, management and strategic thinking, and working with us to develop our matrix of what we're looking for, of customizing that and tailoring that to perhaps some of our lessons learned, some of the things that we have come to understand about the dynamics within our departments, within our elected officials, and within our community. So that piece really stood out to me among the proposals, just from having gone through the experience of the last 6 months here.
Mhm. Great. Anybody else want to step up before I start calling on you?
Really? Nobody? Okay. I would piggyback on that. I also noticed the idea of drawing from us to create a matrix, which I think is really great. I also appreciated, and everyone mentioned the positive things about Traverse City. I appreciated that. Is your name actually Amy? Okay. Admitted that we have challenges and opportunities here. I don't think anyone taking this job should be unaware of the fact that there are challenges for working in this community. And so I appreciated that being mentioned as part of her presentation as well. I did appreciate that the other two companies both talked about trying to sell Traverse City as a 12-month city, which I believe is correct, and the attitude we want to portray. And that's all for now.
Great. Other volunteers?
I'll say that I was most impressed with Mr. Walsh's presentation. I thought it was the most straightforward and understanding of our community, and not to flip it on its head, but it does sound like a lot of busy work, meeting with everybody, creating a matrix, and bouncing around, and especially since in less than 6 months we may have a different commission here that wasn't part of creating that matrix before we hire somebody new.
And I can agree to a certain extent with that. I do like the idea about getting a broad range of feedback from both elected officials and from staff about what they would like to see in a candidate and what qualifications they feel are important or attributes that would help the office work smoothly or elsewhere. But each of us has only a certain viewpoint, and handling it as a series of one-on-one interviews may not be the most effective way of getting out the commonalities in thought process. Like, I might have something that if I'm just in a room one-on-one, that I think these things are important, but if I had listened to what Tim has to say, I could have said, you know, he said something a lot better that makes sense to me.
I would just counter that by saying that I may be more likely to be fully candid and disclosing in a one-on-one session than I would with my fellow commissioners. Not that there is
That
any
is also fair.
ill will.
Which is why, say, our performance reviews for the city manager and the city attorney are done in one-on-one settings.
So, Mitch, just to clarify, so were you saying you were also along with Walsh, or
Well,
your inclination?
I could say that, yes.
Well, which would you say then? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I did appreciate his targeted approach of both having a pool for Michigan, but also looking beyond that, and then bringing forward candidates that fall under both those pools.
Okay. Tim?
To me, two of the key things that I was looking to hear was an aggressive nature. And I mean, we as a body had talked about that previously, but that was one of the two key things for me, as well as a diversity of candidates being aggressively looked at, essentially, not just like, oh, and nobody did, but not any sort of token sort of thing, like a true looking at a diverse pool of candidates. So those two things, diversity and an aggressive approach. And yeah, Mr. Walsh led off with those two things right away. Not that the others didn't include those, but I mean, in taking notes, that's what I have right at the top of the paper.
Okay, so we're kind of a split down the middle a little. I guess I would also throw in my 2 cents of where I'm still, people say we don't listen and don't make up our minds in session, or we made our minds up ahead of time. I have not. I did appreciate all the presentations seem to really have in mind what we're looking for. I didn't feel any of them were not using, I think a variety of nets to cast, and so I appreciate that. I think that the presentation from GovHR, I appreciated how widespread their network is to, once we get zeroed in on the criteria, to be able to cast that net far and wide and perhaps find some candidates that we would not have maybe even expected. That can be an advantage of being larger. I also appreciated Amy's very aggressive timeline, as well as I'm a bit biased. I recruited my last employee via LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is a tool that can, and everybody mentioned it to a point, so I don't want to negate that everybody didn't mention it, but to have certified recruiters is actually pretty indicative of looking for candidates who are tapped into that as well, because your candidate has to be tapped into that to find them in that platform. And I think that as we've talked about communication here as a city, we've talked about needing to have more open dialogues both with the commission, the staff, and our public. I think that people who understand how communication works 21st century wise are plugged into social networks and things. And I'm talking about candidates, not our firms. All firms demonstrated that they're on board with that and understand it. But candidates who are more tapped into that, I feel like are maybe more of the candidate that we might be end up looking for. So I guess I'm kind of on the fence a bit myself, and it sounds like the group is kind of in 2 camps here. So do we want to talk a little bit more now that everybody's presented about pros or cons that they've heard mentioned here in the group?
I'll just
Sure, Tim.
throw a wrench in it, kind of, not a
Go.
wrench, but I'll do my,
Come
no,
on.
not a wrench, but
You're going
devil's
for your
advocate,
PR
the last
today.
thing. I would be completely fascinated by a candidate who refuses to carry a smartphone and only carries a flip phone. Completely fascinated by that potential.
Wait, what? Who are we talking about?
She is talking about like people that are plugged in
Oh.
with modern technology
Oh.
and all. I said I would be fascinated by a candidate, not that we would hire that candidate, but somebody that was so bold as to carry a flip phone and not a smartphone. Like that would be intriguing. Like tell me more. Like how do you live your life that way? And do you actually have to talk to people then instead of just doing this?
Yeah, how could
Well, that
Frank
was-
send you an email about, hey, there's this pothole we need to
Yeah,
address?
there was a trend in Japan that's what students were doing, but they still had access to computers at home. So I don't know that we'd get quite as interesting a person as you want, Tim, but it could be out there. You never know.
I have to say, I'm intrigued by Amy's team of what appear to be young, largely women on her staff. As a woman, that means a lot to me. And while they may not have the background that the other 2 groups have, or the storied history of recruiting for municipalities, I am going to assume there's a hunger there and a desire to prove their worth and what they can do. I would take a chance on an up-and-coming firm myself.
Okay.
But I'm also very curious about Amy and Tim talking about how it is you've made your final decision on the TCLP recruiting company. I felt like I came into tonight without good criteria for
Well,
which
you should have
to
talked to him about
select.
We didn't have as many quality
Yeah.
options. We have high-quality options tonight. We did not have that luxury, and the firm that we did go with was outstanding. It's kind of like they just didn't have competition. It almost seemed, I mean, there was, but it
Yeah.
was.
Well, it's,
Well,
there's
what it
less of
was-
a market for
You're right.
municipal
It was-
Well, what it was that it was we had the unique position of hiring for utility and having a firm that was part of the RFP that specifically focused on utilities. And everybody else that was in the game or in the mix had utility and so that really is what drove them to the top. And as Tim pointed out, we do have the luxury now of having a lot of, and such a wide variety of experience. I don't think I realized it when we were picking it a couple weeks ago at the meeting, but we really did kind of pick like new and upcoming, large and national, kind of mid-range and local, and we have a really good, hats off to everybody here because it is a really hard decision that we're now faced with.
Yeah,
so.
I would also like to commend both HR and the ad hoc committee
Yeah.
for going through the list of 12 candidates and 12 candidate firms and narrowing it down to 3 that all seem to do good jobs.
And actually, I do want to point out, not to pile on, but that GovHR is women-owned, and in the very first section of theirs as well, diversity, equity, inclusion, and strong networking among the channels, particularly to outreach those communities that may not be within a general communication channel, or maybe in addition to. I mean, I think we are suffering from too many wonderful choices.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
I do feel like any of the 3 would be.
and so I guess I would say, I would push this group again, I guess, to take a little different approach to it and Tim sort of struck on it based on my comments too. I think I lean a little bit towards Amy Sell because I like the composite of her staff, the technology that's used for outreach. The fact that there is a startup background there for, kind of in a business manner. Believe me, I'm not the person, I think I've said it many times up here, that says government should be run like a business, but I do think that having that ability to look at even, when recruiting for startups was looking at business in a totally different way. And I'm kind of approaching this to Linda's point, like I did the executive director search at Light and Power, where we kind of said, hey, it doesn't have to be a former utility director. It could be somebody who's done a lot of great work in green energy, or it could be somebody who's not been a director before but led different aspects of it. And so, I feel like that, or I guess that's where, in that presentation, it struck me as the firm that would probably be most likely to recruit maybe a candidate we hadn't originally thought of, but based on our criteria, drilling into that, not just saying city manager, assistant city manager. And I'm not saying that everybody else was just strictly limited to that, but maybe would call a city attorney who, and this is totally made up, who has, gone the route municipally or something that, that might just be a little bit more outside the box. That's just where my take is though. But so I guess that's kind of the question of, what qualities are we really looking for the firm that are important to us in the search?
Well, I think one of the things that we have seen just in the time that we've had Mr. Geisner as our interim city manager is the need to, that we're moving in a direction, or hopefully are, of getting greater collaboration among departments, more communication among department heads, more thinking about project overlap. And I know, I understand from the point of view of trying to talk to all of us that could be some busy work and doing those one-on-one interviews. But I think with Amy Sell talent, the idea of doing those one-on-one interviews with department leaders and getting their input is going to be a really critical factor to move our city forward in an effective way with the teams that we currently have. And so that is still something that I think is very important, and to me more interest than where someone is on their DISC profile.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anyone's saying that they would just rely on their DISC profile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole notion of considering transparency, given how we entered into this a few months ago, would probably serve us all well. I also found, as I was preparing for tonight's meeting, really incredible reviews of people who work at Amy Sell, and what a wonderful place it is to work. And that means a lot as well, I think.
Okay, others? Go ahead, Tim.
Now that I've sat here, and I was paying attention, but back to Linda's question about the Light and Power search firm. I did serve on the ad hoc. We had an ad hoc working with the search firm, and I got to serve on that. So it was mostly teleconferences. But my understanding of how they operated, it was very much hands-on. this isn't, I'm not trying to like point out, this is more just answering, but very much hands-on. They were trying to talk to as many of the candidates by telephone as possible, to describe the, to have that full conversation, describe the opportunity, so for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts from everybody?
It's already been said that we have 3 outstanding candidates. That's why on the committee that I was, willing to recommend that these 3 come forward. So no matter what the motion that gets made, I'm not going to stomp my feet and, fight against it. But I will say that one thing that stood out with Mr. Walsh's presentation was, I believe you called them passive candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of ways of looking at that when people look for a leader. And some people are attracted to the person that is confident and knows that they are in charge. And I'm somebody who always thinks, and that includes all of us as an elected body, that the person who puts their hand up and says, I should be in charge, is always suspect.
Yep.
And often, the people that should serve in these roles that are most qualified for it, that I've seen, are reluctant to apply for it. And that's why there's, they say there's these disparities in leadership and the diversity in leadership in our country, is that some people will look at the criteria,
Mm-hmm.
and if it doesn't exactly match their resume, they're like, I'm not sure. And then there's other people who believe in transferable skills, and they'll look at it and they'll find a way to kind of sandwich themselves in it, and they just swing for the fences. They'll apply. And I've seen both of these people. I've hired, been part of boards that have hired, I think, about 5 CEOs and 3 tribal managers. And each time it's been flipped like that. So it really did stand out to me, I think he called it the cheerleader aspect, to like kind of build somebody up to make them understand that some of these skills that they possess are exactly what would be best for Traverse City and would match what we're in need of. And it's just, I'll leave it with that, but it's something to consider, and it stood out to me.
That's a good point.
You were saying that for Mr. Welch.
Mr. Walsh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
He's the one that spoke to
Right,
that the most, and it stood out to me.
Thank you.
Mitch,
I think it's
where are you at
Walsh.
with an important
It's
quality?
Walsh, isn't it?
Walsh.
Walsh,
Mr.
not Welch.
Yes.
Walsh.
Well, that also stood out to me, as did, I would hope that a major municipal management conference is something that all 3 firms would target, but only one firm mentioned that in their presentation. And that does seem like a prime recruiting opportunity.
Okay, fair. I do believe Ms. Sell, mentioned it at the end of hers when she said in addition to that, but Mr. Walsh, you guys, now you got me saying it wrong. Sorry, Mr. Walsh definitely did hammer that one in, though. So it seems that we're kind of in between 2 firms right now, and I guess what are we looking for that makes someone more sitting in one camp, not willing to move, or what's an argument somebody's looking for from another to, again, kind of like zeroing in more a little bit, what are we looking for that's of the prime importance? And I guess we'll open it up now to a full debate of back and forth of why proponents of one might say, that's why my candidate has it, and someone else might say, this is where I think it's lacking, and we can kind of hammer it out a little bit more.
One thing, you brought it at the last session, Linda, was the what we had on the ad hoc, the rubric, and it had the point system on it, and maybe it would behoove us to pass that around. And if the commission wants to consider price point, and as well as the points that were allotted to each of the candidates when it was brought to the ad hoc committee.
It's more of a blind one.
You want me to share that?
Oh, you have it
mine,
handy?
but I would- Yeah, that's
Could
really
we,
awesome you did.
could we, is there ability to get like 5 or 6 quick copies of it actually? So we're not just passing it up and down the row and somebody saying, I can't quite see that yet.
Okay.
Has my notes on it.
That's if that's something, I mean, I'm sure we want to
I'd be
consider
interested.
here.
Yes, I do.
And,
And I agree, that would be, it's a good point to go back to. Sometimes interviews help us to clarify points, and sometimes going back to the blind results might remind us all of what.
I'm looking at my notes for Mr. Walsh. He, let us know that he's placed 17 females in jobs, 7 people have already contacted him, 10 people in state, 10 people out of state. He was very specific about already getting on board. They're just two, for me, those two companies represent very different approaches. And I'm generally more drawn to the Amy Selmop, but a strong case can be made for Mr. Walsh as well. It's just a different style.
Go ahead, Tim.
While the copies are being made, there's like an interlude. Mayor Pro Tem made comments about not being decided. And I share that. That's part of why I wasn't really asking questions. I was more interested to hear what you all were asking to try to better understand where you were, because I am undecided. They are all 3 excellent candidates, excellent organizations. So just trying to take it in and see where it leads. I don't want to come across as flippant and, I don't care, because this is possibly one of the most important decisions we'll make, but
Very important.
that's part of my quietness.
Yeah. And this is just one data point that quite possibly means nothing, but I did find it interesting that, at least among the provided information, the city of Alpena went with GovHR in 2012, but more recently, when they were hiring a replacement city manager, they changed to Walsh.
Well, I don't know that I'd go with gaps that long because the decision-making body
Yeah.
might have totally changed, as we've pointed out,
Exactly.
might happen in November here. So I don't think that's a reflection on GovHR or.
And all of these firms, so there is a timeline ranging between mid-September and early October for completion. They are slated to complete the process before the election, which I appreciate.
I have a question, I guess, and it might sort of, I'll see, let me see if the rest of the commission is comfortable with it. I have a question about the, and you could even just answer from your seat if it's a yes or no, Mr. Walsh. The forms that form that you have everyone fill out, I assume that does not go public in any way? Correct, okay. That was just I'm a big, in my job, I do a lot with rubrics. We judge books all year round, we use rubrics for it. I like having that information, but I don't know that I just want to make sure, because FOIA and OMA can get very tricky sometimes, just making sure that if somebody's filling out those forms that they have the due privacy of maybe not wanting anything out there until they're a finalist or something like that. And so once you start putting things in writing like that, I feel like it gets a little bit more questioned. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, and to that, and this will be only a incomplete partial memory, but back to the Light and Power experience and the ad hoc committee, because I believe the ad hoc meetings were public meetings, and so the candidates were all kept anonymous from the ad hoc. So we were talking about the candidates with all their specific scrubbed, however that was, I can't remember exactly, with the recruiting firm, via Zoom link or whatever it was. And it wasn't until we as an ad hoc decided on 10? How many did we forward?
I wasn't on
to
the ad hoc, but actually you all, as my understanding was, had kept everything anonymous until you decided the final 3.
3.
But and then they were made public because we invited them for a public
And
interview.
then at that point, then it is public. But just to try to
Right.
tie it into what is confidential and at what
Right.
point it's wide open, sort of.
And that's where sometimes utilities get a little more leeway than the public, so that's why I wanted, a public body does. That's why I wanted to lean into that a little more. Now, as I do recall, Tim, and you'll have to remind me, because, diversity and some other key points were made that we were not 100%, but we were looking for. Some of those qualities were attributed, were they not, during it? And so that's, or at least when the final slate was, this composes X amount of, a little bit of diversity for you without
was
saying,
conveyed to
this
us,
person is
right.
X.
Yes.
Yes. So I just say that because even though it was anonymous, we did stress that enough that some of the more personal, I guess you could say, traits that we were looking for, something that more than just job experience were able to be conveyed to us without, or to the ad hoc without it also then being pictures, and first and last names. So I definitely would be looking for something like that in our process as well. So and again, because especially if we're recruiting people out of nowhere, I think they would want to know that they were a final candidate to be interviewed before it could go public that they were looking around or accepting other offers. And I want to be respectful of that for any candidates, putting that out there in case somebody, one of our recruiters reaches out to you, that we do want to wait till it's absolute final round to make sure. So the one, oh, go ahead.
So I don't know if you guys care to look at, comparing cost, proposed timeline, and then that bottom line was like the overall score.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all kind of falls in line with what, what they presented. It's just what you care to look for. I believe these are all significantly cheaper than the TCLMP.
Yes, they are.
They're even cheaper than the Traverse City Housing Commission Executive Director search.
Okay, well, look at us go.
Don't say that. They're all going to raise their prices.
Yeah.
They're sitting there listening to you.
So I guess I have a follow-up question. Would anybody mind if I asked for an extra answer from one of the candidates?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Go for it, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So Mr. Walsh, if you could come up, or yeah, come up because it is a public meeting. We want everybody here if it's more than a yes or a no. So you've, in yours, you kind of talked about how you've already plugged in some information. I'm assuming that you would redo that list after we gave you a little bit more specifications of what we're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say I know what your goals and objectives are right now. What I did is plugged in your mission statement, and I read your minutes for a year, and I took off your top things you were looking for.
Well, before, I don't want to make it too unfair, so let me get to my direct question, sorry. I'm trying to keep it as parity as we can, but I do appreciate that. You have that form that you have everyone fill out, and, we heard in the case of, for example, Amy Sell, that she does a template or a rubric that's based on what, individual interviews. I guess, how flexible are you if you are dealing with 7 individual voices up here, plus staff, plus everything else? Is that just, you get, the form goes out, the rubric is what it is, or how do you tweak it, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, and in 5 minutes, you can't get into everything that you
Sure.
do, but we do the staff interviews, we do the meet and greets, we offer the one-on-ones, we do all of that as well to put that into the matrix before we move forward.
Okay.
We take all those steps. Some communities just don't want to do it.
Right.
It's all up to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification.
Yep.
So, and I appreciate the time taken to read all of our minutes for a year.
Yeah.
That's an impressive feat. And also hearing that there could at our discretion be staff input. I do think that, to Linda's point earlier, in the interest of transparency, involving our department leaders
Absolutely.
Would be a very important step, regardless of the firm that we ultimately choose.
Since I think we've gotten the feeling that, at least in public appearances, there has not been as much transparency as the city would benefit from.
Well, I think also it's very easy for a body up here as the decision-making process and the hiring, that we are 7 people, but we're not full-time. We don't have offices here. We are a city manager-focused government, so having people, having the people who are here day to day and will be interacting with the new manager, give at least their, what they're looking for is not a bad thing to have factored in as well. So, and again, as I think it was mentioned, some bodies take that into consideration, some don't. That's the option we have, but I agree with Ms. Stanley that that is something I would be looking for as well. So let's do a straw poll right now, and then we'll go to that. Linda?
No.
Tim?
Mr. Walsh.
Aye.
Amy Sell.
Mark?
Mr. Walsh.
Okay, so there we go. So we're either tied or we'll move it. I'm but really, I do feel bad that I'm struggling, to Tim's point. I asked maybe a clarifying question here and there, but, I think Ms. Sell's company has a lot of diversity in its team, and it has a lot of, to the point I think I might have misrepresented, the LinkedIn aspect I think is a great way to recruit, but the conversations happen to actually make it happen. I don't think that anybody's ever been, not even in my case, did I hire somebody just through LinkedIn messages and and that. So you definitely still have to have that conversation and do that. I appreciate Mr. Walsh's, being one person, I think can also be a plus, because you are kind of, everybody, what's going on, where every status is along the way, and I think that's a really great way to be. Not to make it more difficult, but I feel like I am leaning a little bit towards Amy Sell, just because it is that a little bit extra behind it. Mr. Walsh has a really good track record and a really good process, and so I wouldn't, again, to Mark's point, I don't think we have anybody bad up here, whoever we'd end up with, but there are some aspects of Amy Sell's that I'm leaning towards for what I think, and this gets down to it again, where I am for what I think we need in a city manager moving forward. I think everybody's going to recruit good people, and I don't think it would be bad. I just think that maybe that's a little bit leans towards maybe more of, again, the kind of communicator and plugged-in leader. And I don't mean that they could still have a flip phone, Tim, and just check their LinkedIn on their computer, but maybe more of what I'm looking for leadership-wise. But there again, that is me as a voice of 7 people being completely objective, and that's where we're all coming from on this right now. So now that we're all tied.
Yeah, so it doesn't help that there was only 6 of us. I'm also feeling a loss of Ms. Bosley. Is she on vacation, or is she still out?
Is she ill?
Or was she just not supposed to be here tonight?
No, she was not supposed to be here
Okay.
tonight.
Okay, well, we're on our own, guys. Go ahead, Tim.
So I'm just sharing.
Yeah, please.
It's what's in my brain, but, so when this ad hoc recommended these 3 firms that we move forward, and I asked some question because I forget exactly how I worded it, but to me, with the limited, I didn't have as much information maybe as the ad hoc did. Mm-hmm. I questioned the inclusion of Mr. Walsh because it looked like such a small firm and looked from the outset like only Michigan. So I was very skeptical. But was reassured by the ad hoc that no, like having looked more into it, it's a broader firm, and yes, it's mostly one individual, but still came highly recommended. And so I went from there to wherever it is that I might be right now. But part of what's in my head, and I'm not trying to be dismissive of what Mayor Pro Tem is saying, because that's all very valuable, but what's in my head is that human connection. And I don't have the words to express it necessarily, but that's what I hear from Mr. Walsh. And even though I was so skeptical of it's not a one-man show. He's got a network, regional partners out there, however many, et cetera, but still it's that human connection. And at this point, we just need to get those names of those qualified candidates to us. I mean, it's more than their names. They have to be genuinely interested candidates. And it's still up to us to look at the attributes of those candidates and decide, are they what's best for this city? Again, now I'm just thinking out loud and babbling, but it's that human connection that is probably why I've gone from being dismissive, frankly, probably of Mr. Walsh, to now like, oh, that could make sense, because back to Mr. Wilson's comments about, passive candidates. Like it's, I see it as personal opinion, but through that human reaching in and being, like he's really emphasized, they're all said they'd be aggressive, but he really emphasized being aggressive. So being aggressive to reach in to some of those passive candidates and try to pull them out and get them pushed toward Traverse City. So again, just thinking out loud that's part of what's in my head.
And I want to acknowledge that we have commissioners up here who've gone through executive searches previously on this side of the table. I'm going to bring another perspective. I've recently gone through a recruitment process for an executive level position as a candidate. Having done that unsuccessfully, part of my experience with that process is what is driving me toward Amy Cell talent. And that is the extent of my comment.
So, I would counter a little bit to Tim, but valid, but I think we're also getting into terminology. So, and I appreciate that, Mr. Walsh said passive. I think though, a lot of other companies, when they say we recruit, that's not just saying we go to our database, that's saying we look for candidates and we recruit them. And now true, and this was where I did get pulled also to Mr. Walsh, was the phrase, the use of aggressive. Now that can be good and can be bad. I think Mr. Walsh seems very personal, so I think it'd probably be very good coming from him. But I do think that that's where if you have a team of people that also specializes who's doing your ask. And I think that, how do I want to put this? I guess I would say that the approach that Tim, you're kind of talking about is a little bit more what might be referred to as old school too. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think though sometimes people can dismiss finding someone through LinkedIn everybody's talking about sending emails, everybody's talking about using LinkedIn, everybody's talking about social media. No, none of these firms are not saying they would use that. And I appreciate that about all of them. That's why I'm glad we interviewed all three, because it's been a real revelation, I think. But I think that ability to do the first ask, to have a wider network than, and again, it's so tough doing this because everybody's so talented, but again, to split a little bit of hairs, Mr. Walsh is saying he's in 17 states heavily connected. This is a larger net now. There's more than 17 states and more connections through the staff people from what I was hearing. And again, this is in any other field, I feel like 5 years ago, every single one of these would have been a number one all on their own and then no question. And we're being forced to split hairs almost literally up here to tiny pieces. But that to me, kind of that wider database and network makes me feel like there's a stronger possibility of finding that right person, even if they're in Vermont, as my example was, and that's not one of the 17 states that connection might be in. And I'm not saying that was specifically, that Mr. Walsh is not in Vermont or is. I'm just saying that was given to be a broader base for the search. And that was where I think that tipped me slightly over the edge for Amy Cell, is I feel like that's just going to be more candidates out in a larger field that have deeper connections to find those passive or to recruit the different types of people. But again, that's where I would just offer a counter.
I'm looking at my original notes, and my original notes were GovHR USA #1. So maybe we need to go back and look again.
So we're kind of, it seems like still at loggerheads. Is anybody?
I'm willing, as an appointed board member who will not be here on November 8th, I am willing to back off and let the 5 of you make a decision.
That's not what you were appointed to make decisions on behalf of the community.
Well, then I'm
so nice try, but no.
Staying with where I am. I'm just trying to find a way out of here. It's after 10.
It is after 10. I feel bad.
There's nothing legally requiring you to stay in this room. You can't leave.
That's true. You could leave, and actually, this is a contract. We wouldn't even have a quorum then. I guess let me put that back to you, but I think in more maybe a slightly aggressive way, not in a passive way, to use the phrases of the day. We could postpone this decision until the 10th, but does anybody think that's going to really help them?
No.
Exactly. No, and I'm not opponent or proponent of that. I just wanted to point that out, that all the more reason we have to kind of dig in a little bit more tonight.
To your aggressive and passive, in quotes, words there, I would float the idea that somebody could be aggressive and make a motion.
I think we can do that.
Their language, sorry,
Yep.
my packet.
I can read the language if you'd like.
It's the first page
You
here.
basically just have to fill in the blank of the firm, but it's
Okay.
that the mayor and city clerk execute an agreement with blank to provide executive search services for the position of city manager at the fees outlined in their formal proposal, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager, informed by the city attorney, with funds to come from the city manager budget.
I will make that motion blank Amy Sell. Talent. It's after 10 PM and I'm losing my voice. This
Yeah.
is the most I've talked.
So there we go. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Support.
Okay, Linda supports. So now we're down to, this is kind of like when we nominate the different positions. So now we're voting this up or down. So final arguments.
Can we, yeah, just for discussion?
Yep.
Real quick.
Absolutely.
I'll just recall that originally the ad hoc was only going to bring forward 2 candidates. And so,
And it was originally going to be Amy Sell, Talent, and GovUSA, GovHRS
correct.
USA.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, does anybody have any final comment right now?
This vote, of course, requires 5 to pass.
You're right.
So you're aware.
Does anybody on the commission have any more to contribute to the discussion? Is there a comment from the public? All right, let's put it up and see how this one goes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, there we go. Consensus reached. Tim got aggressive, got us get aggressive. Thank you, everyone. This really was an incredibly difficult decision on our behalf. We kind of go lightly up here we get along well as a group, but it doesn't mean that we didn't take this decision with all the intention and thank you that we came with it and all of the importance that we know comes with this decision. Again, it was a matter of absolute, not even inches, centimeters of differences that I think got us here. And we were very grateful that everybody applied to be here and came and gave their time to present.
Thank you for being here. It was a joy. We are a full-service HR firm, doing everything from evaluation as city managers.
Are you going to apply?
Pardon?
Are you going to apply?
I'm not, thank you. Beyond that, but also paying classification studies, grant writing. Wow, those are good numbers those grant writers are going to get. So anyway, give us a call if we can help.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton.
Thank you.
If I may,
Yes, go ahead.
I publicly want to thank Mr. Wilson for the diplomacy that showed us the path forward,
Yes,
because I followed his lead.
there you go. Well, that's much appreciated.
That makes much more sense. I knew you weren't
All right.
following my lead.
All right. Okay, we're down to the last thing under public comment, Mayor and City Commissioners. I only have one. This is for the public to know that I will not be a candidate this fall for any position for the City Commission. We are hereby adjourned.
Nice.
Oh,
Wow.
Was that your plan?
was Carolyn and